Hi guys, welcome back to Two Worlds Collide podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by former Australian paratrooper Justin Prosser. Justin and myself deployed to Afghanistan together in 2012. In this conversation, Justin shares a first-hand account of surviving IED blast, the events of the 29th of August, and his time in the military. What follows is a story of resilience, teamwork, and survival under unimaginable circumstances. This episode includes real footage audio from the IED blast, so viewer discretion is advised. I also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge something important Justin shared with me a week after the podcast. Talking about these incidents has brought up some emotions and PTSD. Justin wanted myself and the viewers to know that from this podcast, he is now seeking help and is no longer masking these emotions. I hope you guys enjoy. But yeah, you ready to go?
Yeah, man.
All right, let's do it. Mate, Justin Prosser, welcome to Two Worlds Collide podcast. How you going?
Man. How you doing?
Very, very good, mate. Again, I always reflect on the last time I seen some of my military guests, and yeah, I can't remember the last time I seen you. It would have been sometime up in Townsville.
It would have been. And again, same thing. I remember when I first discovered your podcast, I was like, I know that face, I know that name. I'm trying to put it together. Yeah. And I think we're all guilty of that. We knew so many people.
I have a lot of boys reach out to me now as well through my website and through social media, and they'll say, hey, I was here for this, I did this. And I'm like, man, I cannot remember who you are.
Yeah.
Then I got to go through and ask people that I know, like Toop, Foxy or something like that. Hey, like, do you remember this guy? Yeah, he remembers this guy. It's just, and so many people ask you outside of the military, oh, do you know this person in the military? It's like, it's a big military, man.
Yeah.
No, I don't know that person. And then you break it down to the platoon level. Like, you could be in different companies, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. You don't know anyone outside of your company.
Yeah, but like you don't know who they are. Like you lose track of who they are. Yeah. And even in the platoon, through the platoon, I think, by the time I separated from the ADF in 2022, it was like, I don't know, there might have been 3 people still in.
Is that when you got out in 2022?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Jesus, not long.
I initially separated in 2018, mid 2018, when I was an instructor down at 1RTB at Kapuka. And I have heard you talk about it in the past, first recruit training battalion. And, that's a challenge of a posting. I've heard it's a bit different now, but I initially just went, I'm done. And I just went and did heaps of reserve work. Yeah. And then I picked up another trip as a reservist, platoon sergeant role. And then
where'd you go?
I did Op Resolute.
Yeah.
And that was just based out of Darwin over the 2019 period for the federal election.
Yeah.
And we started off with 1 and 34, and I think we swelled to 1 and 49. Yeah. And at that time, my boss was on the water with 2 teams. All the teams were out. I was pretty much myself, my driver, the clerk, the OC, the XO of our contingent, and an OPSO. CSM was away, so I was doing his job. Yeah. I was a corporal doing a platoon sergeant role, platoon commander role, Comm Sergeant Major role, XO role. And
sounds very familiar.
I loved it though. Professionally, it was phenomenal because I was back briefing at a higher level. Yeah. And I was given that command authority or leadership authority by the OC to just go for it. Yeah. But anyway, so then I picked another trip, and then I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, so I just did a CFTS for a while, and then I transferred to the Air Force. Did just under 2 years in the Air Force, and then got out.
What did you do in the Air Force?
Mate, full CKDG.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Nice.
It looked different realm.
Yeah.
Good. Lot of good people in there. But Air Force has a different posting cycle or style of how they want to post people around. They're more than happy to leave people where they are if they're happy to stay there. Yeah. But it becomes challenging when you have people in the same unit for 10 years and they've done their whole career in the same unit. So there's almost like this subconscious authority that they are the be all and end all of what is the unit. And Air Force is very different in the sense that they have weapons instructors. So not every NCO can give a weapons lesson.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I finished up in Canberra and left from there.
And that's where you're at now?
That's where I am now.
Yeah. So what are you doing now?
So I work in project management. I work for a large consultancy firm. Yeah. Wasn't the first role I did when I left. I went straight into contracting. Yeah. And I worked in like a learning development training role. And I did a lot of traveling. I traveled a lot of different bases and I'd give instruction on these particular systems that defense uses. Originally started off as army systems, it became whole of defense. Yeah. And so I was delivering to public servants, to all the services, to contractors, to the contracted support as well. Yeah. And then we'd write a lot of the user guides for it as well. But I didn't realize how busy I was. I mean, I was probably gone on average every 2 to 3 weeks for about a week at a time. Sometimes once or twice I had to back it up with the next week for some short trips, which is fine. Things happen. But I didn't realize how worn out I was. But what I will say is it was probably, there are things I could have done better. But again, when I was transitioning out of the ADF, it's, you've been there yourself. It's like it's a journey of discovering of what your left and right is, what you can and can't do, how do you fit into the world, because you've essentially stepped from one world to another. Hence the two worlds collide.
That sort of made that just came from. I had discussions with my wife and I had a discussion with my friend. I put some stuff through ChatGPT and then I thought I want something that is like a little bit military orientated, but then I also want something that represents the guest.
Yeah.
But then also me.
Yeah.
And Two Worlds Collide came out of just no military stuff, but then I got the military photo and put it on the side. When this episode's released, I'm doing a rebranding now. So I'm actually changing that military logo on the side. That'll be my face, but like half blacked out. Like they do on the Sean Ryan show.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the type of industry I want to get into now.
If it works, plagiarize it.
Yeah. Well, mate, a lot of the big podcasts do that. They and I was talking to my wife about this, about rebranding and the importance of people getting to know me as a podcast host. Because they want to be familiar with like someone. So when they listen to me, they want to be able to picture me in their head as well. So that's why the rebranding is coming out and my face will be on the logo going forward, is because they want to be like, oh, I listen to this guy. I know who he is now. They can make it familiar with them.
That makes sense, because I remember, okay, when we spoke about Sean Ryan, he'll probably see this now. But, he did a rebrand on how he displayed his face on Spotify, because he used to have his guests.
Yep.
And now it's him. And I was like, who am I listening to? Who am I looking at? And that makes sense, though.
Yeah,
it's about his show.
Exactly right.
Yeah, gotcha.
Joe Rogan does the same thing.
Yeah.
Chris Williamson. He does it's called Modern Wisdom with Chris Williamson. He's one of the biggest podcasts in the world, but he doesn't delve into anything military or anything. Sure. It's more of like one of these self-help podcasts. He gets a lot of really interesting people and he's a really good podcaster. But again, it's a personal brand. So, for me going forward, I sat down with my wife, who's a bit of a marketing genius, and she's like, we need to, change the dynamics on how we market the podcast. We've got my social media right, but now we need to dive into email marketing, and then we also need to market myself as a podcast host, so people get to know me.
Because it's your show. You can't just sort of go, we're a show. It's like Good Morning Australia. No, it is your show.
Yeah, so we want people to listen because they enjoy listening to me, and the guests just fluctuate through. So, it doesn't matter who I have on, I still have 10,000 listeners.
Oh, man, I love it. I know I've told you 1,000 times already, but I think what you've done is, I'm going to say it's fucking sick.
Yeah, mate, it's cool. It's cool. I'm really enjoying it. It just started off as an idea out of a long, I've said this before on my podcast, I was running 40 Ks or something one day, and it just, I don't run with music. So I just run with the...
what are you, nuts?
Yeah, everyone says that. But I just run with, and I just enjoy my thoughts. And out of the long run, this podcast birthed. And look, here we are, episode 35. You'll be. We're actually recording this episode on the 9th of January, but it's going to be released later on in the month.
Yeah.
Just because I got a whole bunch of guests that I did over the holiday period.
Yeah, nice.
That are going to come in. But yeah, mate. It's all up and running. It's all really good. I'm getting really good feedback. My social media is growing, and mate, it's fun.
Mate, you're driving it home.
It's fun.
Maintain the rage.
Yeah, where where I sort of want to get to is like a Sean Ryan show.
Yeah.
But I'd also love to, like, sometimes I think people can really hamstring themselves with podcasts when they just do it of like, I'm going to do a fitness podcast, or I'm going to do a military podcast, or I'm going to do a self-help podcast or something like that. They completely hamstring themselves because that means they only have a certain amount of guests on there. Like if I only want to be a military podcast, but a really good UFC fighter came to me and said, hey, I want to go on your podcast, I'd be like, oh man, you can't come on because you're not military.
kidding yourself.
I don't really want to be known as any like military podcast or anything like that. I just want to be known as like someone that just has cool guests on.
Someone interesting.
It varies every week. And if it varies from like a sleep expert to a military guy to a UFC fighter, then so be it.
Yeah, I like that. I like that sort of approach you're taking. It doesn't, it keeps you in. And even if it's split different guests, different style of guests every week, you know, it breaks it up and mixes it up. You know, for example, I know when I watch too many military podcasts, I go, I can't. I just got to turn it off. Whereas if you have, you know, something that's different, well, then you're going to tune in more.
Yeah, exactly right. And just, you know, keeping the guests come in every week is fun, mate. I just get to meet new people that I've never ever met before. I get to reconnect with guys as well. I haven't seen you in over a decade. A lot of my military mates, you know, Toop, Nilo, Foxy, Frenchie, all those guys. A lot of
Burst.
It's K9 Steve, although I'm really good mates with him and speak to him most weeks. It was great to have him on the podcast. So, mate, just a really variety of guys jumping on. I'm having a whole bunch of people reach out to me now as well. So,
man, you mentioned K9 Steve then. And I think I spoke to you on the phone about it. Like, I remember even in the unit, he was an animal. Like, he's just a weapon of a human being, just a machine. And then he's managed to like scale and leverage his skill set to what he's doing now. So again, props. Yeah. Just phenomenal work.
Mate, I've never seen someone that's so big that can run that fast as well. Me and him did a 50K ultra marathon on the Gold Coast a couple of years ago in December.
Yeah.
Ended up being like a 34-degree day. There was no cloud cover whatsoever. And he beat me by 10 minutes.
What did he like 10, 15 kilos on you?
Oh, more, mate. I was weighing 75. He was he was weighing 101 at that race, so he had 26 kilos on me.
What a machine!
Yeah, he's a freak.
Imagine running him in a dark alleyway.
Oh, yeah. Well, luckily he's always been behind my back, helping me out. So, it was you know, good friends like that growing up, and mate, blokes like that. Because I joined the military when I was 18. Like they had a lot to say in my progression as a male, you know, and having my identity. So. Like these guys that listen to my podcast would know that, and they know who they are, that they had a big say in who I became as a man.
It's funny you mention that. I mean, we've all done a lot of reflection in the years, right? And I reflect on something like that. So I joined, I think I was 23 or something. So I'd already had a bit of a life beforehand, and I didn't really appreciate somebody who'd come through from 17, 18 years old and how that shapes their thought process and where they go to. And you know, if that's all they know for 20 years, then how do you even consider starting a new career?
Even learning how to become a man in the military, are like, especially if you're in an infantry unit around these tough, hard individuals where you have to grow up really quickly, or if you're on the outer and you're out.
It's a click.
Yeah, and mate, you turn into this person that when you leave the army, it's very hard to adapt it back into normal life.
But you can turn it back on when you need to.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, it's hard. But you said something. Oh, again, I forgot what you were saying then. Sorry. You said something about coming through 5 or 10 years. Oh, that's what it was. Again, I could be wrong. Don't they say something like the male brain is not completely formed until you're 25?
Yeah, that's
so again,
true.
You think about how malleable, or whatever that's the correct word, but you know how much you can shape that young mind to perform tasks that most normal people wouldn't consider doing. It's a lot easier, and that's why they make such good soldiers. Really, and I guess it makes it hard if that's all they know. And so how do you suddenly, you know, for me when I was 23 joining, I was in the workforce. So I already knew how to speak to people, and admittedly it was in a, you know, blue collar-y type warehouse and sort of stuff, but I still had to speak to executives. And so then you have somebody who spent their whole career just saying shit, fuck, whatever, as commas. You know, suddenly they have to slow down, speak, and then go, what is a job? What's a resume? What is that, you know?
And because I joined 18 straight out of school. And then I got out when I was 24. So a lot of my, like whilst my brain was still developing, I was getting turned into this weapon by the army.
Well, it'd be interesting to see. I don't know how you'd measure this, but it'd be interesting to see, because I know we briefly touched on it earlier before we jumped on the podcast, but you know, think about how many times you cooked yourself to the point of almost going down as a heat casualty, or you're just constantly moving along at 30, 40 degree heat, you know, 80% humidity, body armor, whatever it is, in and out of air-conditioned vehicles, back into the heat, or whatever it is. We all we used to always have that term, like if you're not pissing yellow, you're not working hard enough.
Yeah.
So like it was like, so you think about a 23-year-old, 24-year-old that's just cooked their brain for 6 years. What kind of damage has that done in the long term? Who knows? And especially the exposures that we have. Most people only ever do their, high explosive things like 84s once or twice. Then they might fire them once a year. But then what about the young guys who end up in heavy weapons platoon and where they're firing 50 cals and 5,000 rounds sustained fire machine gun missions and those sort of things. So what happens to them at the end?
Yeah.
Or even when they're 60?
Mate, a really interesting podcast I did with Corey Neal. We spoke about this topic with that exact thing, mate. Just the use of heavy weapons continuously, but he's also probably got severe PTSD that blocks his memory on certain things. And when we did sit down and talk about the podcast, I had to remind him quite a few times of the topic because he forgot it now. Whether that's a combination of like CTE from firing 84s and weapons, like we do know now that there's been studies come out on that subject. And I'm also trying to get a subject expert on a doctor, CTE doctor.
That'd be awesome.
Mate, he was supposed to come in over Christmas, couldn't make it, so we've rescheduled for late February.
I think all that started with the NFL or something, didn't it?
It did. Yeah. And obviously now it's filtering through to the AFL. It's big in the cricket world as well after the
Oh, cricket balls, yeah, of course.
Yeah. And,
it's fun. I don't know, like, you look back and you go, NFL, you're just running into each other or whatever. But as you get older, you look at it and you're like, geez, I don't know, I'm a bit more mature, a bit more understand the ramifications of what that's going to cause. But at the time, it's like, it's a future Justin problem.
Yeah, mate, that is, that's my military career in a nutshell. I always look back on myself, even my thought pattern sometimes. Like the incident that we'll probably talk about, that happened to you. You were in the car. That got hit later on in our trip.
Yeah.
Hit a IED. You were in that car. The guy that was in the rear gunner position was a friend of mine. I remember seeing him 4 or 5 days after that incident where he's almost lost his life, and I laughed at him. But, like, I was just in that. I was in that mind frame of like that was just funny to me. Well, you
didn't die, so you're like, that's all right.
Yeah, and like. He just got all his front teeth smashed out, half his jaw got broken, and he had severe head injuries. And I just remember laughing at him. But that's like I said before, that's how we were molded into the people we were in the military. We just laughed at that stuff.
So I won't get into discussion about what happened, but there was something you mentioned about, how you laughed at him. We were standing at the rear of the vehicle. We'd put the driver and crewie. The crewie went into shock. We wrapped him the crewie went into shock. We wrapped him in a space blanket, which is weird in the desert.
Yeah.
And then the driver was pretty well. He's just sore. And but then the person who had his teeth, he was just speaking about. He's standing there with a bag on his shoulder, and I don't know if it was myself or the secco or something turned around, and I can't really quite remember, but I've got the photo on a collapsed hard drive. I need to get that recovered so I can get those good photos from it. But, it was basically, it's like, hey, blah, Billy Blogs, smile. And so he's standing there with, blood everywhere. He's, and, we're smiling, but we're finding the joy in a tough situation.
Yeah.
And so if you can't do that, then you'll fall apart. So, I think that's where the bants comes from. The banter's just red raw in the battalion. Like if you do something that's like the slightest not what's supposed to be, it's like, you fucking idiot, and everyone's taking the mick. Like they rip you. I miss it, but at the same time, I'm like, fuck, pretty rough.
Yeah. We used to really get into each other a lot, but we used to find a lot of morale out of it.
Yeah. That esprit de corps that comes from it. Yeah.
And you really got a lot of mateship on it as well. If especially someone fucking up. I remember one time we were on an exercise, someone left their night vision equipment. Like we had to walk into this job, 6K walk in, a night assault, and then we had to do the drawback, make sure everything was right, and then we walked 6K back. And when we got back, one of the diggers were just like, I don't have my night vision stuff. And obviously, that's a controlled store item, so we have to get it back.
Think about the 2IC too,
mate. Yeah, I know, mate. So we had to walk all the way back, but like, we found a lot of morale out of it because that one poor dude, we just hung shit on him for weeks, months, like years after it.
Rightly so.
Everyone gets some morale out of it, but the poor guy, like, I'm pretty sure like he didn't go on the trip or anything like that. You make mistakes like that. You just don't get trusted.
Imagine that conversation twice. He's like, where's your night vision? What do you mean? Like, fuck. Walks up to the secco. Hey man, got an issue.
Yeah.
Fuck. Seco then walks up to Platoon Sergeant, hey, Sarge, issue. Imagine the boss walking up to the OC and then, like, I don't know. Yeah. I've seen it a few times over the years where dudes were ripped out of exercises, paused to go find a controller. It happened on my sub 2 corporal, funnily enough, on my SIOS course. Someone lost a sight. They fell off their weapon and then just paused X for like 12 hours for everyone to go find it. Yeah. I was lucky. Myself and another dude had to lead the next day. So we actually didn't go. We just sat there and wrote orders and, you know, tried to stay awake as you scribble down the page because you're falling asleep.
Yeah. Hey, we just mentioned before the IED strike that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Did you mind like walking me through that?
Yeah. What do you want to know? Like, go for it.
Yeah, pretty much just everything from the start to the finish. So like how it happened, and then you know how you recovered this situation and what happened.
Yeah. So I'll sort of back it up a bit, even towards the start of the trip. Our first gig that we had, I think it was one of the companies was doing a clearance through the green zone from north to south. And I believe it was up around Shora Valley somewhere, or just south of that. It was like, it was in vicinity of the, I believe from memory, I could be wrong, in vicinity of where they dropped out then, green on blue was. And so but we didn't do much. Like my first patrol was a night patrol in the dashed, you know, like just cool. And so we got a little bit comfortable, I think. And as the trip went on, we did a bunch of clearing patrols, our own independent patrols, but our main task was convoy security, like Tubi spoke about on the podcast earlier. And then obviously we had the big incident of the green on blue. And there'd been a few IED strikes around the battalion, around the battle group, or whatever we called ourselves then, a task force. Yeah. And I think we're about 2 or 3 weeks going home. And we were going to do a resupply run, provide the security for the resupply run up to going back to Shora Valley, I believe, from memory. Can't remember the name of that patrol base for the life of me. I've got a big map of the AO at home. I should have a look. And so I believe we might have left later in the day too. And I remember I don't think we wanted to stay. I remember there was a bit of a consensus. We didn't want to stay at this patrol base because where we used to stay, it was always outside the patrol base, but it was right near the burn pit. And so he was breathing that shit in. And I remember one night, actually, at this same patrol base, the dogs were hanging around the burn pit, and I sort of looked and was like, what the fuck's this? And I said something, and it looked at me and started going me, and coming towards, like barking and walking towards me. And I went, oh no. And I sort of grabbed, I was a gunner. I was carrying a
9mm?
But I carried the 7.62 machine gun. What do you call it? Maximise?
Yeah.
So pulled the 9mm out, pulled my Browning out, and then I think what happened was the dude on picket lased him with his, would we have PEC fires or something, I think, at the time? Yeah, so lased him and pretty much made the dog blind.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we didn't want to stay at this patrol. So I think we wanted to get there and get back in a day. And we were going, if you remember, we always went, I don't know if you actually ended up going out there. Did you ever go to Shora Valley?
No, I don't think we went that far.
So there was 2 ways you could go. There was a tarmac road. I think they called it Route 62 or 66 or whatever it is. I can't remember. But anyway, essentially a north-south route. MSR, really good MSR, well made, but it was IED alley. Like there was just IEDs. And I remember when we did go up there a few times, there's just huge craters in the side of in the middle of the road. Anyway, so we'd always go, a majority of the time we'd go, keep going east and through the dashed. And we'd go through this particular area. It looked like 2 mountains or two hilltops, and this would never fly now, but we used to call it the tits back in the day, and everyone knew it as the tits.
Yeah,
and I mean even the Americans, it was the tits. Like everyone just knew it, and so probably about 5 k's in from where that turnoff was, we could go north or east. The Americans had hit an IED about 2 weeks or a week before we were there. So when we got there, there was just mess on the road. It was just contamination everywhere. That the mine labs and the dog just couldn't pick up on anything. And so what normally would happen is, because I was the main gunner for the section, we for the majority of the trip we'd had 2 PMVs, 2 Bushmasters for the whole trip, split between the section. So we only had 4 people in the back per car, which was really good. We just swapped. They started their withdrawal. Australia had started doing, or NATO forces and the coalition had started their withdrawal, and we were, what do we call it? Retrograde. There's weird terminology, but I was the main gunner. So when we're in the car together as a section, I was generally out the rear hatch, right, as the main gunner. which is pretty much SOP for most sections, I think, from memory.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah. I love being a gunner. It was so good.
Oh, it was the best part of it. Like
work parties, bro.
Yeah, but also as well, whenever you were in a car, you didn't have to sit in there. Like you got to stand out the back with the 58, and you got to see
shooting
everything.
Pen flares off and throwing rocks at people.
But like, if anything, if anything kicked off, you got to fire.
Yeah,
that was a good part about it.
I never got to fire from the car in conflict.
Yeah,
I fired in a training activity up near the range. You remember the range at TK? Yeah. So we were up there and we were like, it was awesome. It was actually a really good activity put together with using American helicopters, and it was a cool activity on the range until the locals came up and tried to take all the rounds off the hill.
Yeah,
and
they got
I think
dangerous.
by that time the Aggies had taken over from the Slovakians, so they're out there trying to shoo them away, as opposed the Slovakians pretty much just kicked them on the backside and dragged them off.
Yeah, they used to shoot pen flares at them.
Anyway, so what happened was we got to a point, and I think the 2IC is like, "Hey man, I want to jump down. I have a quick look where this yank crater is." I was like, "Yeah, sweet." So he jumped in. Anyway, because we were in this one car together, the 2IC was sitting right next to the radio stack. And so he climbed across to everyone to get up, and I climbed across everyone to sit in his seat.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, "Yeah, cool. I just want to have a quick squiz." I was like, "Yeah, sweet." So I was like, "Yeah, man, let's go." And this other person was sitting next to the rear rack, goes, "Don't worry about it, Pros, mate. Don't climb. I'll get up." And I think he just wanted to get out. Like, it's, what it's like in the car.
Yeah.
And especially when you've got a full car, your knees are interlocked. It's like sitting on a C-130. And when
you're just staring at each other.
Sometimes those convoys were 10 hours long. Like, they were just a nightmare. And so, anyway, I was like, "Yeah, cool." We swapped out. And I think I don't even know how far we traveled. And I literally put my head back. I don't know if you had the same, but in our cars, we just had pillows everywhere. Because do you remember how your lower back always got
was
cooked? Because you had no lower back support. So it was like, 25 bazillion pillows in behind there, plus one either side of your head. Yeah. And I just rested back. And then out of nowhere, I just remember just this, I don't even remember a light. I just remember being thrown somewhere. I was strapped in, but I remember the car being picked up.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember it being loud, nothing. Apparently the Secco reckons he saw me and my arms were up like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
So I must have drifted off, I don't know. And so once it struck, it sort of, and this is my memory, and again, I could be completely off here, I don't know. But I just remember hearing doing something like, we're all yelling at each other, like, "Tell off," like, are we all here, and we're telling off. And I said, and once we kind of figured out what was going on, I think it all happened fairly quickly. This is how I remember it. I then said, "Hey, I'm in the best position to go check the driver and crewy," because the Secco was sitting across from me. He's got other jobs to do. So I pushed forward and checked on the driver and crewy. And I remember I went to the crewy first, and I go, "Billy Bloggs, how you going? You all right?" And he goes, I just hurt all over. I really hurt." And I was like, "Cool. All right. You breathing all right?" He goes, Yeah, I'm breathing." And I just screamed back, "He's breathing all right." And then we just swapped to the new version. I think it was like a Mark III variant of the Bushmaster. So we'd just gone, and I think they had extra armor underneath the driver and crewy for these very reasons. And because we did a front left strike, and then he just goes, and I think we spent about 3-4 days putting it together. And he just goes, "It's a fucking new car." And I was like, "Oh yeah, right. You're fine. Like, you just saw." And I looked over at the driver. He was a good looking fella too. Like, I was jealous of how I remember my ex-wife now, but my wife at the time's like, "He's a good looking kid." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right. He's like a Taylor Lawton looking, dreamy vampire, whatever, wolf thing." Yeah. And I said, "Where you hurt?" He goes, "My chest hurts." I said, "Oh, okay. You breathing?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, I just screamed back, "His chest hurt." And I just went, and we had a PWS, a powered weapons sight. So we had a 50 on the roof. And I just said, "Hey, I'm going to check this 50 if it's working." Because I was a fairly senior digger. I was close to 4 years by that stage. And our section was fairly senior too. And so I just remember going, "Well, how do we," and this is all split second decisions, right? But it's like, we initiate our ambushes with claymores and explosions and that sort of shit.
So you potentially is like knowing what's coming.
And the reason I jumped up is we didn't have a windscreen. The windscreen was blown off behind us.
Yeah.
And so, instantly I'm like, "Well, I've got to protect the driver and crewy." And I get up there and I said, I'm going to check the 50. And it was like, because of this ambush thought process I was going through, I had to like do this check breath, like, "Okay, we can go now." And I just cracked the hatch, jumped up, and I got up there. It was just a mess. It was just a clusterfuck. And I was like, "Oh, 50's down. I need a gun. Give me my gun. Give me a rifle. Give me something. And so they threw a rifle at me, and I stood up there. And then I think that's when I was sort of starting to do stuff, and the engineers started coming back, and we were the third car in the third vehicle in the packet, and they were clearing back, and the engineer yelled up about me or something like, how are my legs, how am I feeling or something, and I said, we just need a medic. And by this stage, we'd thrown red smoke out. Now, interesting enough, once we'd, it's been years later probably, the crew that was behind us, the vehicle behind us, I remember him, like I said to you earlier, he came up, was on my sub 2 sergeant, he walks up and he goes, hey, guess what today is? I'm sitting in a pit on a defensive position, like a battle position, as part of a defensive position. And I was on this sub 2 sergeant course. It was all corporals. And he goes, hey, guess what today is? It's your anniversary of the IED blast. And I was like, you fucking asshole. and had a laugh. Like I was like, cheers, you jerk. But even just chatting about it then, he goes, do you remember how long it took for that red smoke to blow out? And he goes, to be thrown out? But no, and he goes, it was about 60 seconds before we saw any movement out of that car.
Yeah.
He goes, so we saw the smoke and you hop out. And that was it. And I was like, he goes, I think you're all knocked out. I said, it's possibly. Yeah. I don't know.
Man, that's a long time to hold your breath for, because if you don't see anything, that's alarming.
Yes.
Really alarming.
That's what he was saying. He said he was terrified. Yeah. He's like, we've got a big one here.
Yeah, because if you generally, just for people at home, non-military people, the first thing you do is you just crack a smoke grenade and you throw it out. And that just means that the red smoke grenade, that there's injuries inside. But if you don't see anything, that means no one's thrown anything out, and then you're just assuming the worst straight away.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was either red or green green was good, red was bad, and you had to throw something to let people know.
But if you weren't getting anything, you were assuming the worst.
Yeah, and the reason why we did that was it was different courses of action would then go ahead.
Yeah.
So yeah, even he said it was terrifying. Anyway, so I remember we started clearing things, or the engineers were clearing back. And like I said, we'd had a front left strike. Windscreen was missing. The side bins blown up the wazoo. We had, I think it was the left wheel had blown 250 meters off somewhere.
Those wheels weigh 100, 200 kilos or something
like that. Yeah, pretty heavy.
Shows you how heavy the IED blast was.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was quite big. And I've heard different stories about the size of the charge. Whether it started at 30, I've heard 45. I don't know, whatever. But it was big enough.
It probably gets larger with time.
Probably. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, bro, it was 75, kilos, and then I had to deadlift this tire back, and I was just tire flipping it all the way back.
In another 15 years, it'll be 100 kilos.
That's right. Yeah. And then there was bloody unicorns everywhere.
Yeah.
And so anyway, and I think I'm a bit blurry on sort of what happens next. I just remember being back. Our SOP at the time was to, and again, I probably shouldn't speak about this because it may be the SOP, but we went behind another car. All right? I won't say which one, but we went beside another car because it gives you a bit of hard cover. It's a rally point. Everyone can come in, and there's a bit of overwatch with the person with their weapon above you. And so the driver went into shock, and we wrapped him in a space blanket, like I said earlier. Sorry, the crew went into shock, I should say. The driver, he was good. He just saw, and then we had the rear shooter. And then I think pretty quickly, man, like the dudes had jumped out and given Overwatch pretty quickly. And we had a UAV, I think maybe. I know we had Apaches very quickly. Apaches came over in the first probably 5-10 minutes. Yeah. So we had some pretty good Overwatch. And we knew there was a Bedouin camp out to the south. I saw it coming in. And I thought, I reckon it's them. And they wouldn't let us go over. They're just like, we're going home.
Yeah.
Like, all right. But I remember we were beside this vehicle, and then eventually we had 2 American Black Hawks land, and I carried both stretchers. I think both stretchers up, one or both. I can't remember. But I remember walking back and just looking at the car, and I'm like, we're going to pack this thing up now. What a pain in the ass. And it was a mission, man. It was a mission. And I remember we were coming back, and I remember sitting in the back of this car just going, can't go to sleep. Can't go to sleep because I was worried about being concussed myself. And
you would have got a major concussion for sure.
Probably. They checked me over and said I was good. Like everything else, it's like your post-operational deployment psych test. You're like, what happened over there? Oh, this, and this. You good? Yeah, I'm sweet.
Mate,
and off you go.
Yeah, their concussion tests are like, it's like, how many fingers am I holding up? No. you got to give him a yes or no answer. Is he holding fingers up?
Yes.
You know, like
is
something
it 5
like
fingers?
That. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. And then so it's more of that yes or no. It's like, yeah, well, he's got his hand up. Yep.
Hard enough as a grunt to count to 3, let alone try and count to 5.
That's right. That's right.
Mouthful of crayons.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was just, it was good. And I remember I think we got back pretty well when it was dark. It took us a while. And they didn't get their resupply, the patrol base. They did get it later. I think your platoon might have gone out. Oh, no, maybe it might have been, I think Charlie Company had ripped in back by that stage. I think they went out there and did it.
Yeah, maybe.
And so we had one more. Well, once we got back, they checked us over. It was pretty tame. Yeah, good. And I think we just got on with it.
Yeah.
And I remember we had another mission where we had to go out. And I think it was so close to the end of our trip that our next mission was a handover at Hoto with dudes from Seven.
Yeah, coming in.
And so we went out on a mission. And I remember one of the dudes in the sections was like, I don't know if I want to go out. Like, I just don't. And I remember chatting. I already said, fuck these guys. I'm going out. Inshallah, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So I just went out. And again, I've heard you talk about this in the past where like you're content with whatever was going to happen. And that was my way of dealing with it. It was like, inshallah, like it's going to happen, like God willing. Like, and something I stole from the ANA. And so we went on this. I remember chatting to this 2IC from another section but in the same platoon who's now working elsewhere. He's like, don't let him beat you, man. Just don't worry about it. Just go out. And I was like, yeah, I'm already doing it, bro. Don't worry about it. I'm going out. Like, and I think he was just like, you never. He said something along the lines of, you never forgive yourself.
Yeah.
And he's right. I reckon I wouldn't have. And I think that comes with kind of what we were like. I remember in my para course, who jumps out of an airplane at 1,000 feet, 330 meters off the ground or whatever it is, like, and I remember standing there and it was my first ever jump on the training course, and the dispatcher, or what do we call them? Not the dispatcher, there were guys from our unit threw us out the door. What do we call them? No, they were the dispatchers. We had loadies on the aircraft. Sorry, they were the dispatchers. And I knew him, and it was my first jump, and he's like, don't fucking worry about it, man. You're good. You got free medical. Fuck it, factor. And I just went, yeah, sweet. And off I went. Yeah. So I think that's where it came from. It's like, and because I was more senior, I would be considered a senior dig, right? Yeah. So I think I just said, stuff it, let's go.
Yeah.
And it was uneventful. I took probably about half an hour in the car. I was sort of like, legs were jolting a bit, sort of, okay, what's going to go on? What's going on? And then eventually I just went, we're good.
Yeah. And
I jumped out the hatch. I do remember those like shooing cars back because we were going west and like towards Darfshan. We didn't go that far, nowhere near that far. It was about a 70k drive, but we were going west. And there was a spot on that route where a prior mission to that, kids had been throwing rocks at us a few times.
Oh man, that happened all the time.
And I remember we had the OC with us, who was a Cav OC. We worked under Cav for that trip, which was different culture.
Yeah.
For the most part, pretty good. But I remember eventually OC goes, I've had enough. He gets up and he takes a section up and finds the mullah or something on the effect like that and just goes, one more, I'm going to run a clearance through the village. Like you now, because I think one of the ASLAV drivers got hit in the face with the rock. Yeah. And they didn't have full face helmets. So and he was out the hatch. So he was smacked in the face. And he goes, I'm not putting up with this. Because it just tests more SOPs and TTPs.
Yeah.
And so he just goes, we're going to come through. And we'll arrest your kids.
Yeah.
And something like that effect.
Yeah. So at the start of the trip, we didn't really do too much back to them. But midway through to the end of the trip, we used to shoot pen flares back at them.
Yeah.
And that used to normally get rid of them.
Do you I don't know if you were part of this mission or not, but your platoon was, but we provided security for the engineers to extend the car park behind the police station in TK. Because before our task group arrived, if you remember, we'd heard about it. It was like a month before we got there. A bunch of Americans from their PRT were walking along the side of the ANP police station there through those shipping containers. Yeah. And this was just before 8-9's trip was the same thing. They had these kids dressed in white and they'd come through and suicide bombers and they'd blow themselves in place. Yeah. And it happened to the Americans. They had quite a few casualties on that.
Yeah. So there were 2 suicide bombers. The one you're talking about was like literally the week before we got there, and that was in TK.
Was that soon, was it?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
2 Yanks died on it in TK. A suicide bomber just walked around the corner and blew himself up. The next one was a 13-year-old suicide bomber. That happened somewhere north of TK. And I've actually got footage of that on a hard drive at home here of that 13-year-old blowing himself up.
Was that the 8-9 trip?
No, that was our trip.
Our trip, was it?
That was our trip. Yeah, and that happened. They happened really in close succession with each other. So yeah, the first one was like a male, maybe I think he was identified in his 20s, blew up and killed 2 Americans, and the next one was a 13-year-old suicide bomber.
Yeah,
and mate, the Yank that got hit off it, a bit of shrapnel bounced off the ground and then came up and struck him in between his. How do I say this? Well, there's no other way to say it like this. It hit between his arsehole and his ballsack.
On the gooch or the taint?
Yep, right up in there. And like a couple inches worth of metal bounced up in there. And when they were working on him, they thought he'd been struck in the legs and stuff like that. So they instantly started putting tourniquets on to stop the bleeding. And it did nothing because the bleeding was actually coming from in between his ballsack and his arsehole. When they identified that, they ripped that out and then they just started pumping it full of like
quick clot.
Yep. Yeah, pumping it full of that. That guy ended up being fine though. He ended up getting stitches and just it was like a few weeks later he was still walking around the base.
Huh. Okay.
There was another one that got pretty badly injured. I think he had to get flown out of country, maybe go to Germany for it, if from my recollection. But I remember walking around and just being so alert to everyone that's coming close to me.
Yeah, so TK was an interesting one. So we provided security for the engineers, and so for that reason. And I think, I found some bone in that area, and again, I wasn't sure what it could have been a dog for all. Who knows? But I was like, well, that's interesting. But essentially, I think it took about 4 days to build this new car park at the back of the police station, and I don't know if you guys got to use it. It was a HESCO car park, and so originally they'd park at the back, and then they'd walk around and go through the front gate. The idea was that and it was a really thick double stone wall. It was quite thick, and it took the engineers quite a while to get through it. So essentially, we had every night we'd go back to TK, like back to the base, and then we'd come back and redominate the area. And then we had to clear it, and so it took quite a while every time we wanted to come and go. But there was an incident where so they built a HESCO car park with a gate at the back, so they can just walk straight in. And I remember standing on the towers up there and just feeling so exposed on this police station going, this is, I get it that you want to have a presence, but in this sort of heated conflict, I said, that was so exposed up there. It was incredible. But there's two incidents that happened on that 4-day mission. First one was, again, I can't remember which came first, but I'll talk about this first one first. We had a bunch of kids that were coming on their motorbikes and they're, testing at ROE. And so we all had our free fire lines. But then you had to use your better judgment at the same time because, when they turn around and go, your free fire line's 100 meters. That's impossible. You can't stick to that, especially in a city. Yeah. And so we had these kids on motorbikes and they were just testing what's going on. And I remember a few times we were sort of going, all right, we need to keep an eye on these guys. And then I think we got a bit blasé with it. Then we had to get back on track again. So it was just interesting to see that sort of going on because theoretically within our ROE, if you just want to go black and white, theoretically we could have engaged. Yeah. Right. But again, wouldn't have gone down too well. And I would have felt like a dirtbag. Yeah. The other one was we had a moment where, because we'd been there, I think it was like day 3, we'd started buying from the local area. So buying like naan bread and jam and gophers like Pepsi Max and all that sort of stuff. And we're chatting to a guy, he was a chef in London. So he started making us stuff. And so we're buying it. Myself and another dude, he's still in. He's a warrant now. And, we were just buying stuff. It was awesome. I think the whole section was. And then we started, I think then 2 of the boys said, I'm going to buy toys for the local kids. And this teller just runs out and just grabs their toys and starts smashing them up right in front of us. And I've instantly reaction, I'm not going to pull a machine gun out. I pulled my pistol and then it's Pros. There's the 2 I see. And I was like, oh yeah, fair enough. Let them do their thing. Yeah. And there was another time where I was out the front of the AMP front gate, and the dude that got injured in the IED with his teeth, he was sort of behind me. So I was a gunner. I was just taking a knee, and he was above me. And this car came screaming down the road towards us, and I was instantly up, and I was about to engage, and he just goes, "Stop!" And they stopped, and it was like the ANP. They were just shit-faced.
Yeah.
Just screaming down the road, and they just nearly copped a burst of 7.62 through the front of their car.
Mate, they were probably high on opium as well.
Oh, they would have been off their face.
Yeah.
They always were. And I mean, you know when you go out of town and you're going out to the east and you'd go down into the river and back up again, and there's a checkpoint at the top there.
Yeah.
That got crumped when we were there as well.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that was interesting.
I used to find it so funny that whenever you used to go past the A&A or the A&P had their, little bases and stuff like along the way, they would be growing so much weed there.
Oh,
it
insane.
Was like,
I know.
And they were all just high.
I'm not going to lie.
They were high as a kite all the fucking time. The police and the army.
Well,
it was wild.
They didn't get paid properly, if at all. Always skimmed off the top.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was abundance there, I'd be ripped the whole time as well.
Yeah.
If I was them.
Yeah.
But there was a moment where we were doing a joint op with the Americans, and I think we were providing security for the American convoy, and one of their vehicles broke down on that little bridge right down in the creek, in the river there.
Yeah.
And, I remember walking in front of, somehow I ended up in the front of patrol in a massive fire lane, which was weird as a gunner. And I was like, I feel pretty vulnerable here, but you crack on. Whereas that moment when we're on the bridge was probably when I felt the most vulnerable, because there was no one on our flanks. There was no one behind us on top of the hill. There was someone at the top of the hill on the other side of the checkpoint. But outside of that, it was just our car and the American convoy vehicle, whatever their logistics truck was. You remember those low beds that they had, the 8-wheeled things? And it was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So there's just people everywhere. And I remember just going, how do we control the situation? People screaming past the trucks. I mean, if anyone was going to come through and blow us up, it would have been then. It was insane. They could have done a drive-by and got past, and just no one would have been able to do anything because it was just so congested. Yeah. Yeah. So that was probably, that was interesting. Yeah. I'd forgotten about that.
Mate, so many guys come on this podcast and they talk about stuff, and we just remind each other of stuff that happened over there. And it just goes from our memory, but then we'll be coming and just like we're doing now, we're talking and it just comes up and you're like, man, I did not know that happened. Like one of those incidents remember when Blackie died?
Yes.
Yeah, I completely forgot that from my memory.
You're about 2010 or whatever it was?
Yeah, on the exercise coming back from Townsville. Yeah. My memory just blanked that out until Toop started talking about it. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Who's Blackie? And then I was like, what the fuck? Oh, now I remember.
Yeah, it
was a guy that died and I forgot about it.
This is going to sound really, really bad, but I was never really good mates with Blackie. I barely knew him, to be honest, but I never really had any close mates die or take their own life in the unit, which is pretty fortunate. And sometimes I sit back. I'm probably old me would sit back and be like, yeah, okay, someone died. Crack on. It is what it is. But it's probably just because I just compartmentized everything. I was just like, there's a job to do. I mean, I drank that Kool-Aid like no tomorrow. I thought it was the best flavored Kool-Aid going, and it was phenomenal. I loved being a para. I loved being airborne. I loved that title. It was sick.
Yeah, it was good.
And then they're like, light infantry now. Just walk.
Yeah, mate, I still use that now. I still introduce my guests as airborne infantry guys. Like it was a title we had. We got the jump wing. So
yes, it was good. Yeah. A lot of arrogance that come with it. It was good.
Yeah. Hey, were you? No one's really been on my podcast that has been able to speak about this, and I've actually reached out to the guy as well, Kiwi Curtis McGrath. He was going to come on the podcast. December, couldn't get him on when I was up in the Gold Coast, and then I just said, well, I'll catch you next time I come on. So I think eventually he's going to come on and talk about that. But were you there?
The best guy to talk to is, funnily enough, the guy who lost his teeth.
Yeah.
He's the best guy to talk about. I won't talk about it, but because mine's just talk to him about it. Okay. It was it's funny. Again, like we'd worked with Kiwi over the years, and I've spoken to people about it. It is what it is. But no, that's not my story to tell that one.
Yeah, no worries. No. Yeah, the guy that you're talking about with the teeth, I've reached out to him to get him onto the podcast.
Yeah.
See if he can jump on. He's a bit up and down about it. He's feels Yeah, he's just a tough one, mate.
You remember when it was like, we spoke earlier, we were talking about tall poppy syndrome. No one wants to be, like, everyone wanted to be, just want to be part of the youth. You just want to be accepted by the boys. So you never wanted to be singled out in a way. And I think when I had a big problem with this when I was separating the first time when I discharged, I thought I was letting everyone down. So there's this like mentality of like, I don't want to brag about what I've done because someone's done it harder. Yeah. If that makes sense. Yeah, and so that's when like, it was just even popped in my head when you were talking about something about, we're talking about just our history and the trip and whatever, Afghan and whatever other trips people have done. And it's like, I still get this, yeah, but someone's done it harder than me, so it's not that big a deal. Why? It's just not a story, you know?
Get like imposter syndrome.
That's the one. Thank you. Yeah. And that was a big one for me for a long time. So that could be part of it too. Who knows? And you don't even know you've got it. You just, it's how you've been raised.
Yeah. So like, it's funny you say that. Like, mate, I had to convince Foxy to come on here. He needed convincing. Toop needed some serious convincing. Like I pestered him, and he sat on it for a month and a half. Yeah, thought about it. Ross Nihill. Yep. Again, he said, "Mate, I don't think I'm good enough for your podcast. Come on, I don't think my story's cool enough." I'm like, "No, you were a Royal Marine. In the British Army. Like you did Iraq, and then you came and did Afghanistan with us. Like how are you not worthy of the podcast?" So, mate, there are a lot of guys that I've reached out to and they have that imposter syndrome where they either think their story isn't good enough for the podcast or anything. And I'm like, the guy that we were just talking about, the one that lost his teeth, he's exactly like that. He's like, I don't think I'm good enough for your podcast. I'm like, and he also said to me, I don't think my story is cool enough. And I'm like, mate, like the fact that you're walking around and, whatever you're doing, being a good father, being a good husband, like that is enough. But he sees it differently. He sees it as his story isn't willing to be, or isn't good enough to be on the podcast, which is wild.
I can give some anecdotal on potentially why. And again, I don't want to tell his reasons as to why, but I can know just from my experience when I started working in a professional environment. I talk to a bunch of people at work. Even, I'm lucky I still work in defence industry, so I'm surrounded by uniformed people. So I've had like a soft transition out, so I haven't been so exposed to just cut off and then go. But I think talking to, consultants, like my colleagues and some junior consultants or grads or even, sort of management team, I sort of look at it and they can't relate. And then when I talk about, old bloke, old mate, lost his front teeth and he's smiling with blood everywhere and we're all laughing at him and then, buck tooth, whatever. They don't see the funny side of that. Yeah. Whereas I'm like, yeah, man, you should have seen it. It was so funny.
Yeah. There's still that side of me that laughs really hard at that. Then there's like another side of me where I've been separated for over 10 years. I'm like, that shit's not right.
It's not. And that's so I think that's where like I've been really proactive in my DVA journey. Yeah. So I think because I was already doing that DVA stuff and I was doing a bit of research on what to do, the algorithm got me. So then I started getting a bunch of like, oh, there's this organization that can help you with this and this organization can help you with that. And I just said, you know what? I'm 2 feet in. Let's have a crack. And not necessarily because I felt sad or lost or miserable. I'd say a little bit lost. I was still trying to find my feet. So I was like, I'll just give everything a shot. That was sort of the self-agreement I made. I was like, I'm just going to give that a go. If it doesn't work, that's fine.
Is this when you're separating from the military?
Even now, like even up until recently. So I think I've had this sort of exposure to people that kind of understand what we've done, but also sort of have lived in the outside world. So they've kind of turned around and said, you've got a unique story that most people will never have.
Yeah,
and
especially you're in a car that got blown up overseas.
Yeah, and again, I still go, whatever's part of the job.
Like, but that's that. Like, I'm trying to put my hand.
Professional soldiers, man. You just crack on.
That was a part of the job. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. And you like to you and me and guys in the unit, it wasn't much of a big deal. Yeah, but on the outside, it's like a real big deal.
Yeah, I just go, man, I was sick, picked the car up, did this and whatever.
Like, we seen that shit as fun.
Yeah, well, fucking weird.
Yeah, we did though. I was talking to my mum about this the other day because she loves listening to my podcast, and she's like, Sam, the weird thing about your podcast is all of the guys that come on, your military guys, would go back in a heartbeat. Even though what you've been through, you would all go back again. I'm like, yeah, there's just some weird part about us that would.
Maybe
you're a little bit different.
I'm a bit different. I'm different now.
Yeah,
and we'll get to that later. But you know, funnily enough, there was one time I went down as a heat exhaustion. One time only, and it was on the belly stomp on the DSW combat activity. Right, and I felt like the biggest piece of shit. Like, I mean, I was the lowest of lows. Like, I've let everyone down. I look like a dog. No one's going to trust me, want to work with me. Like, you're a sack of shit. You should go, like, jump off a cliff.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I wasn't that bad, but, like, that was the thought process that when you talk to yourself.
Yeah,
right?
you let everyone down.
Yeah,
that's right, what you're thinking. You just let everyone down.
And so I just went, fuck. Anyway, I never went down ever again because it would just stick in my mind. But when I refer to that, I go, oh, yeah, it was like, 80 kilos or something because you had like 2,000 rounds, 7.62 plus the barrels, the 3 barrels and all the shit that goes with it.
Yeah, and people think you're crazy.
Yeah, and I remember just going, I'm just like, but I still let everyone down. Everyone's going, but no one who's lived even in that existence, even people in the army, you're like, what are you, fucking mental, man? Like, that's a lot of weight. And you had a lot, like, it's a hard course. And funnily enough, the guy who ran that course, he and I work on different projects. He's still in uniform, but I see him regularly and we have conversations regularly. And he was a hard man that ran that course, very hard man. And I was talking about the other day, it was probably about a month ago, just before Christmas. And I said, do you remember that time in the course? And he goes, yeah, I remember. And I go, I felt like the biggest piece of shit. And he goes, yeah, I know. And I go, but it's part of it. Like, and I said, but you are a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, I remember sitting there learning how to do fire planning with a artillery WG 2, whatever they call WOG 2s, we called them, the fire plan sheets. And, it was like line 1, column alpha, blah, line 2, column bravo, blah, or whatever. It just went on and on. It was so fast. We had to repeat him. And eventually he just goes, gets his book, slams it down and goes, fuck me, man. How fucking hard is it? And we've been doing it for like 2 hours, It's just like, he was just what he was like. And then I go, oh, man, I was terrified of you. He'd walk through the up and down the lane, the classroom that we were in up at do you remember the Centre Ridge up at Singleton? The refugee lines?
Yep.
Yeah. And so we were there and we couldn't, but we're sleeping in tents. It was weird.
You didn't sleep in the lines?
No, because they were booked out and they didn't have enough.
Yeah,
I think they were running a reserve course up there at the same time.
Tents is like a 5-star hotel for grunts.
Mate, I had a stretcher.
Yeah, like that's living.
But it was in winter. It was fucking cold.
Yeah, it would have been.
Because remember when it's cold, the wind gets up underneath it. Yeah. So anyway, and I remember he's walking back and forth and his knee clicks. The pace counter, he calls it. Just click, click, click. And we were reflecting on it a little bit and I just laughed. I go, mate, look at you now. I could fucking throw you down the stairs and you wouldn't get up. Like, you're an old man now. Mate, ball's in my court.
Yeah, that's it. Interesting story you had before though about, you thinking that you were letting people down, right? I've got a bit of a similar thing and it only happened yesterday. I was on a Google Meet call with some potential sponsors for my run coming up.
Yeah. And, well done here, man. Like, that's a big undertaking too.
Yeah, it is. And one of the sponsors was over in Amsterdam. He works over there, and the other two were based in Sydney. So I was over the Google Meet with them, and I just sort of said, look, I'm really, really looking forward to getting into it. Like, I'm going to finish the thing, and it's going to be good. And we sort of mapped it out, logistics of how they can help me and stuff like that, and where they can help me doing some events along the way to raise awareness. So it's going to be really cool. But one of the guys I was talking to just said, hey, he mentioned it during the meeting. He goes, hey, Sam, just know that, mate, if you even if you don't finish this thing, like, it's incredible that you're trying it. And I almost got a bit offended. And
I know where you're going with this.
But that's that thing of like letting people down. And I just said to him, I said, look, mate, thanks, but I'm
wouldn't work out.
No, like I'm getting over the finish line.
Yeah.
This thing, even if I have to put a moon boot on, if something goes wrong, like I'm finishing in a moon boot.
Yeah.
There is no if or buts of me finishing. Like, it's getting done.
That's one of those characteristics and soft traits that comes across.
Yeah.
Especially from our background.
Yeah. But it was just weird. It was weird yesterday, and on a bit of reflection on myself as well. With just what you just said then, I felt a little bit offended. And you know what I mean? I'm like, fuck you, mate. I'm finishing.
Do you still get the 5 minutes? If you're not 5 minutes early, 5 minutes late?
Yeah,
man. If I'm over, like I can actually feel my anxiety coming.
Mate, I do. But the further that I've separated from the military, like my mate, I caught up with him for a coffee, and he listens to every podcast, so he would know that I'm talking about him. He actually said to me, he goes, mate, I don't even really think that you're going to be on time anymore because you're generally 5 minutes late. And he said to me, he goes, mate, you just, the further you are from the military, the less military you become. And I'm like, that's a great point.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. As you were saying that, I was thinking about, I've relaxed on that a little bit. But I remember years ago, watching a video. I used to watch motorsport a lot before I joined the army. And I remember watching a video from Nigel Mansell. He'd only just recently retired in like the late 90s or something.
Yeah.
And or early 2000s, I can't remember. But he was a British F1 driver.
Yeah.
And he was saying when he would get ready for traveling, he would always leave it to the very last minute. So, he'd pack with like an hour left or something along those lines because he loved the excitement. And that's when you're saying, oh yeah, but I'm a little bit 5 minutes late. So like, do you get excitement from just going, I'm going to leave it, or it's just like, I don't care?
Nah, it's more of that I don't care anymore.
Yeah, sick.
Mate,
that's even awesome.
Yeah, I've just gotten to such a relaxed mode as well. And like I said, the more time I've been away from the military, the less military I become, which to me isn't a bad thing at all. I think it's a good thing that I call it like demilitarizing.
Yeah, and it takes a long time. It's interesting and I've been very lucky where, some might say it cursed, being a recruit instructor, but then I also instructed reserve infantry courses and weapons courses, and I've assisted, some training at RMC. Yeah, and I've also, when I was in the Air Force, ended up as a weapon instructor. So I've had a lot of, exposure I completely lost my train of thought.
Like a slow process of leaving the military.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So that's where I was going. Yeah. So we spend a lot of time developing these people. And so, you spend 3 months it might have changed recently, but 3 months as a recruit, then it's, 14 weeks or whatever as an infantry IET. And then theoretically, they're not even, it takes up until they're 12 months later, once they're in the unit, that they're now classified as proficient. So it's a lot of time to build someone up to become a qualified infantry soldier. It's that's deployable ready. We give you 3 to 6 months. We give a minimum 3 months for separation now. And so you try and undo all of that. It's impossible. And so,
man, I had my separation done in like fucking 3 weeks.
Bro,
I was out of there.
Jesus,
like quick.
Wow. Yeah, it takes a lot. And this is when I talk to people about preparing for their discharge, I'm like, if you're starting to consider discharging, like give yourself a minimum of 12 months and start planning it. But I think for me, the reason why I didn't plan it is because I didn't know what I was going to do.
Yeah.
The first time, like I didn't know what I was going to do, and I didn't know what to do. I was like, I'm going to go to the mines. I'm going to go be a fiery, because I was a volunteer fiery in Townsville. I was a crew leader up there with one of the fire brigades. And so, what am I going to do? I don't think anyone puts any real thought into it. No. And I think that's part of the condition, though, is that in the army, there's always someone there looking out for your back, even if you're not. And so
you've always got some type of structure. Well. Like I say, they always keep you busy. You're always on the next course. You've got the next selection course. You've got the next specialist course.
That's right. There's always something.
There's always something on the horizon that you look forward to, and you got a goal and a target. Like, man, when you get out, you're just looking around. Like, what the fuck's going on here?
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing too. Like you look at it and even things like, how do you prepare your DVA process? If you can get your DVA paperwork submitted and PI accepted, so initial liability accepted, you don't have to do anything with it. It just sits there. It's ready to go for you to go, I'm ready to go to the next stage, which is permanent impairment, the PI. And generally when you're discharging, from what I've seen, and this may not be in writing, but I've seen it's generally accelerated for those who are separating. So if you can plan, if you turn around and say, hey, on this date in 12 months' time, I'm going to be discharging on this date. Well, then you have a whole bunch of funding that opens up for you that you can actually go do further training.
Yeah, this is the stuff they don't tell you, though.
And to be fair, we don't even want to hear it.
Yeah.
This is like, fuck DVA. Like, that was the mentality.
Yeah. Because it was seen as weak.
Yes. Well, let me describe this. So,
And you didn't want to be known as weak.
So
especially in infantry unit. Sorry for cutting you off.
No, bro. And it's interesting you say that because I had the same feeling, but I work in defense capability now, right? And so when you look at projects that are coming online and programs, and for a new piece of equipment and procurement, right? You look at it and you go, when there's a huge budget, let's say there's a $60 million budget to bring something into service over a number of years, but there's a budget to bring, to do your investigations and work out whether it's the right thing to do. There's a budget to start going, okay, well, let's start preparing for it. There's a budget to say, okay, well, let's it's in service, so that's our budget for that. And there's correct names and terminology, but it doesn't matter what it is. But then there's also like a sunset / decommissioning phase. And that's what I call DVA for us. Because we're nothing but tools, pieces of equipment. That's what we are. And there's nothing wrong with that. We soldiers have to do tough stuff, and we have to have that mentality of, not letting everyone down because the mission won't get done.
And it has to be like that as well. Like
that's right.
You are fucking defending the country.
100%.
You need to be a bit of equipment for them.
It's a different mentality, and that's national interests.
Yeah.
It's never about the country. It's about national interests.
Yeah, okay. Different.
Yeah. And so for the government of the day, regardless of who the government is, which is, I have my own personal views about if you're in uniform, whether you should vote or not. But anyway, like the US.
Don't they vote if they're in uniform?
Well, I don't think they do. I they do. I could be wrong. And again, I have heard that they don't. And so,
That's interesting.
Yeah. But again, then at the same time, you could say, well, every person should have the ability to decide on the direction the country goes as well. Especially if you're enacting within the national interest of what's required.
And also our voting is compulsory.
Yeah.
Over in the States, it's not.
Correct. So, I always say, use DVA as if that decommissioning phase. There's nothing wrong with it. The big problem you see around is when it's taken advantage of. Yeah. And I think that's another reason why, especially us, who just go fucking lingers, we don't want to be part of that. But as I've removed myself from, especially this, what I will say when I was in the Air Force is because I had to deliver training to senior members of the Defence Force in Canberra, and majority of the time they were Air Force, I had to develop a different communication style. Like it couldn't be like, from here, Yeah,
it's almost like a new skill you have to get to craft.
Yeah, so instead of me going, adopt the ready position.
Yeah.
It'd be like, all right, from here, what we're going to do is what I need everyone to do is just adopt that ready position for me. Because again, they don't play with weapons all the time like we do as infantry. So transitioning out and being around more of a, I guess, not as hardcore environment, I was more inclined to go, okay, I was more inclined to sort of go, okay, well, it's okay for me to use things like DVA and whatever sort of organizations have aligned themselves with DVA to figure out what works for them, and funnily enough, a lot of grunts are going to get close to a gold card if they're actually honest about what their injuries and ailments are. They go, on a pain scale, like, what's it like? And you're like, well, I don't know. Like, I've always had it, My knees always hurt, or my shoulder always hurts, or my back always hurts. Like, it's something I've never been without for 15 years. I don't know. So,
I just deal with it.
So it's that, and that in itself, that's frustrating too. And the DVA process is a really convoluted process too. Like some things are done on a portal, some things are done on a sheet, then you upload it to the portal. Well, why isn't it all just on the portal? It makes it so much easier. So, and I have written something to DVA recently about it, which they'll probably hear. So, what's up, players? But so you look at it and you go, well, the types of people you're working or trying to assist here, they don't have time for fuckery. It's like, get the shit done.
Yeah.
And especially if they're suffering mentally or financially. And a lot of that, statistically, we don't want people to, sorry, we've got to hear myself. We don't want people to become statistics. And so having a better understanding of the types of people we're working, that they're trying to assist, make the process simple. Don't have 3 different ways of doing something. Like, you put in for, I don't know, a reimbursement of something you've purchased that is in line with treating your injury, for example. You fill out a web form, then you upload to the system. 2 or 3 days later, you get an acknowledgement that they've received it. Then you might get someone to, a month, 2 months later say, oh, we've reviewed it. Let's go into the next stage. And you think, what a pain in the ass.
It is, like the small amount of stuff I've had with DVR. I just thought it's really weird. You know, like sometimes you have to just repeat the same forms over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's really time wasting.
Yeah.
It's like they don't have their own storage on like per person with like database.
Unless they leak it to a university.
Yeah. but nah, look, like even just talking about the separation stuff, I was talking to Dr. Dan Pronk about this.
What a mad dog.
Yeah, he's good, man. He was a really good guest.
Yeah.
Really good guest. He's actually going to come join me for a few of the runners.
Oh, that's sick. Hey, man, you know what? I'm gonna put it out there. When are you doing it?
Starting, and this is an April Fool's joke, I'm starting the 1st of April.
Oh, you did tell me that you want to be done by Anzac Day.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and work it out that I can at least cycle because, I don't run anymore.
Yeah.
I might grab the gravel bike and try and run along with it right alongside you.
Mate.
As I'm sipping my water and have a nice relaxed ride, be like, come on, son, keep coming.
There's a couple really good tracks that I'm doing trails through the Great Ocean Road.
Yeah, sick.
So I'm staying off the road for that, and then obviously I'll be running on the trails. Really nice, which you could probably join me on that.
Are they mountain bike trails?
Yeah.
Sick.
They're just gravel trails.
So I've got a mountain bike as well.
Yeah.
So one of the things like I've got to be really, really careful is because I've got I've got pretty crazy. I've got perforated discs. I've got both knees arthritis, hips got arthritis, shoulder ball joints all loose, and so I've got to be really, really careful when I do stuff that I don't go too hard because if I have a fall, like it's gonna mess me up pretty hard. So, but at the same time, I need something that's going to give me fulfillment, and so I can't run. So I really enjoy cycling now, and I did it around Canberra. I live in Canberra now, and so around Canberra, there's hills and tracks up the wazoo, which we spoke about earlier. You were there recently, but even around where I live, I can just get on a bike and go.
Yeah.
But there's a thing called the Centenary Trail. It's like 200. I think I could be wrong, but I think it's about 230 k's. And generally, it takes people, if they just want to cruise, about 3 days. Like they just cruise around and take their time because it's up and down hills, are super rocky.
Yeah.
But I was doing it with one of the boys that used to be battalion. Funnily enough, in Canberra, there's heaps of dudes from the Bourne living in Canberra.
There are.
Yeah.
My old boss still lives there.
Yeah. There's quite a few, and even XORs. There's quite a few of us down there. And so he was like, hey, let's do this part of the Centenary Trail. So we started at Duntroon at RMC. And then we just cruised up this trail and ended up around like the northern part suburbs of Canberra. And then we cruised back through the centre and came back to Duntroon, which kind of sits on the eastern side of the ACT. It's pretty much on the ACT border with New South Wales. And, I think we ended up doing about 70 Ks. And he did it on his, dual suspension enduro / downhill bike. And I did mine on my gravel bike. And again, I had my tyres pumped too high and I was getting, but there's parts of the track that actually a mountain bike track. Yeah. And so I was like, I'm on this bloody gravel bike and I'm going to drop bars and I'm banging around. And so straight after that, I went, I need a mountain bike because I got 2 dogs that are border collie, Kelpie, husky in the one breed, like they're brothers from the same litter. So they're super boisterous. So, and again, I can't run them because of my knees and my back and everything. So I thought, bugger it, I'll do it with the mountain bike as well.
Yeah.
So,
mate, you can bring that down.
Exactly what I'm saying. I'll bring it down. Yeah. And I reckon there'll be a few of the others that'll be like, yeah, stuff it. Let's go on a boys trip. And
mate, I've had a lot of people reach out to me through the podcast that people in Brisbane, ex-police officer that wants to come down and run a leg with me will actually fly down. Boys I know in Melbourne, guys I know in Sydney. The Pronks are going to come out from obviously Dan Pronk and his brother. A couple other sponsors are going to organise some stuff and just friends have reached out that'll run with me, which is going to be super cool and interesting. But man, I'm a bit the same with my body. Like I've had a shoulder recon, I've had a knee recon, and my left ankle definitely needs something done to it. So
that's like my right ankle.
Yeah, mate. But even going through the training now, like I'm starting to get a swollen ankle. I need to ice it most nights. My knee's playing up a bit, but look, I am getting very strong through the legs.
Yeah.
And the training is definitely working by Matty Abel, who's Ned Brockman's coach.
Yeah.
We all know who Ned Brockman is. He ran from Perth to Sydney and then also recently did his fundraising event where he ran 1,600 Ks in 12 days.
It's a Sunday morning for me, mate.
Yeah. But, so, mate, I'm getting guided by the right guy.
Yeah.
And, this is January the 8th. Training ramps up again to the end of this month, and I have a bit of a lay month and then up again, and then start to retrace the Ks and have a bit of downtime before the run.
How many Ks are you doing per day?
Minimum is 52. I'll probably be disappointed if I don't reach around 75 a day. So I want to
75 kilometres a day?
Yeah. So probably 3 lots of 25.
It's like a mini ultra.
Yeah. Yep.
Son.
Yeah. Mate, I say 52K a day, but I want that to be the bare minimum. There's a few reasons why I want to get it done quicker. One, personal challenge, and the other reasons I won't get into on the podcast because they're personal reasons. Yep. So I want to get them done quicker. But yeah, mate, I think 75 is doable, but 52 is the bare minimum per day.
What if you're on a relatively flat circuit with minor inclines and small hills, how long would sort of 60, 70 Ks take you?
7.5, 8 hours.
It's a lot of time just keep those legs ticking over.
Yeah.
And are you eating on the way, or how's that work?
Oh, look, if you break it down into 3 lots of 25, so you run for 2.5, 3 hours, break for 20, half an hour, have a break, eat, refuel, reload the water, start running again. How do you go after that break? Do you have to keep moving so you don't seize up? No, generally just stop. A lot of my training is starting to get tailored around running and braking. For example, this weekend I've got to run 15, break 15 again, and I'll break for 10 minutes. So a lot of that's starting to come in. The next Saturday I run for 15, break for 10 minutes, run 10, and then break for 10 minutes and then run 15 again.
Right.
So a lot of those trainings starting to creep in. But to be honest, mate, like what I was running 4 months ago, like the other day I ran 30 Ks in the heat in Adelaide. No real issue. It started pouring down on me as well the last half of the run, so my feet got really, really heavy.
Yeah.
And I finished the run and then I just said, I could do this again easily.
Yeah.
And then the next day I had a scheduled 15K run and I woke up like I hadn't run the day before. So obviously all the training and all the leg work, the important leg work that I'm doing in strengthening is starting to really pay off.
That's awesome. That's incredible. Hey, do you remember... Do you get prickly heat after you've been sweating?
I do. I do.
Yeah.
So that's one of the worst things, and that's one of the things I have to keep out and just keep on the front of my mind is just making sure I stay relatively clean, because for people at home that don't know what prickly heat is, it's when you sweat on your back, and because you've got a rig on or like a chest rig, which I'll have.
The runner's rig?
Yeah, I'll have the runner's rig on. So over that, runner's rig, the pores underneath it can get blocked up and dirty. And then when you go to run again, you cannot sweat through them pores, and it's like someone sticking a needle in your back.
1,000 needles.
And mate, it is excruciating. So the prickly heat is one thing that I need to stay on top of, but that's just keeping clean. We're going to be by the ocean most days, so I'm going to jump in there obviously as well. But
just need someone with a little ration pack scourer and the isocol just running behind you, just
mate,
scrubbing it down.
I want to try and avoid that as much as possible. But look, mate, I've got my mum and my wife that'll be there in a Winnebago just following me along the way. A whole bunch of people have reached out to me that listen to the podcast that live in that area that want to come out and reach out, donate, and potentially run a little leg with me here and there. So, mate, it's all starting to come together. Starting to get in all the sponsorship money as well, which is something that was panicking me there for a while. That I talk to a lot of people and they would say, yeah, but it was just that pre-Christmas period.
Yeah, okay.
Like people just don't want to be annoyed before then. And then
it's the end of the year, holidays are coming.
Yeah, and pretty much, mate, I started contacting people. What day is it today? Thursday. I started contacting people Tuesday, and their invoices are sent out, payments that they'll be made. So, mate, it's really, really exciting. It's starting to come together. I had a big business reach out to me, and I've actually been in discussion with them as well about sponsoring their event, and we might even be doing some cool little events along the way to get some community engagement in that area. So that's it, mate. It's going to be really cool. So I always just say to everyone, I don't actually find the task, and this people might call me arrogant on this, I don't find it overly hard in terms of like...
It's because you enjoy it.
Yeah, that, and I'll put it to you like this. Like running a marathon in sub 3 hours is hard. Like you, you have to train for that.
I had to think about it. I had to think very quickly. Like, look at the pros, and you go, that's
So the pros run about 2:20. But for anyone that enjoys running, like running a sub 3 hour marathon, that's like a tick in the box you want under your belt. So it's not like I have to do that every day. Like I just got a minimum run 52 a day at a 6 kilometer pace. So like it's not hard. The hard part is it's just fucking forever.
Yeah, it just keeps going.
It just keeps going.
It's false cresting the whole way.
Yeah, it is. But for me mentally, like I love living in them areas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't really enjoy running too much. I only enjoy running when I'm like plus 20 Ks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then when you get exhausted, you're like, oh, this is the feeling that I've been chasing.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'll go for a 10K run, which will take me 50 minutes. I'm like, this is a little bit boring.
Do you hit a barrier, like that barrier point, and then once you push past barrier, it's like this, it's like a giant endorphin dump, and I'm just going, I'm just in a rhythm, I'm cruising.
Yeah, that's what they talk about with runner's high.
Yeah.
So you get a runner's high every now and then you get runner's low. Like some of the longer races I do, like 100 and 115K races that I've run, you go through multiple runner highs, but you also go through multiple runner lows where, you know, on my last race, I hit a point at like 85K and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I've only got, 30K to go. And I hit this massive runner's high and the sun was going down and I was running over this hill and I could just see, you know, I could see down the coastline. It was beautiful.
So picturesque.
Spectacular. Yeah. 15 minutes later, the sun was down, my head torch was out, and all I can hear is footsteps behind me, and there's no one behind me. And I'm just thinking someone is chasing me down.
Yeah.
Because my mind started playing tricks on me. So I had the runner's high, and then I had the runner's spooks. Because it hit nighttime, I'd been running for over 12 hours.
And you're on your own.
I'm completely on my own. And then I was like, I've got 25K to go. This is going to be fucked. So you go through those moments.
Is it like back when we're in the day when doing night movements where everything feels like you're moving faster? Like as in like when you look around because you can't see the horizon or you can't see anything out in the distance, but you can only see what's really close to you. So you feel like you're moving quicker than you actually are. And then when you realise you're not, Yeah,
it's probably a little bit of a different case to that because by that time when it had hit dark as well, everything started to seize up for me. So I started going really slow, like 8-9 minute Ks. So everything slowed down even more. So what felt like, a couple hours was probably only 30 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
But look, some of the times I'll be running potentially at 2-3 in the morning.
Lucky you've done plenty of night patrols.
Yeah, that's right, mate. That's right. So some of the times I'll be running that early. That's only because it's a really busy period in Easter down in that coastline. Right. So I want to be, especially when I've got to run on the road and there's no trails. If there's trails, I can run in the middle of the day. That's no worries. But if I'm running on the road, then I need to get up and avoid traffic. Yeah. I need to start at 2, finish at 8.
Right.
Get my 50 something out or 60 or 70 that day and maybe even run in the afternoon. So
well, let me know when you're going to be doing those portions that we spoke about earlier, and I'm going to try and figure it out and make it work.
Yeah,
sick.
Yeah. The unfortunate thing is like I have a lot of people like you ask, let me know when you're going to be here or there. I just don't know. Like we have a map in our head of 52K a day, but if I go over that, then we're going to be at places earlier than what we expected. So
look, at the end of the day, you aim for that, and you can just keep everyone appraised. Didn't make it this distance, and that it's pretty easy because from Canberra, I can literally jump in the car, throw the bike on the roof or in the boot, whatever. I mean, I drive a wagon, so full dadmobile. Yeah, it's a tricked up dadmobile. That's a little Skoda VRS. It's like lowered, like 19-inch bronze rims and big loud exhaust on it. It's a G-Ghost Volkswagen.
So I'll
GTI
definitely hear you coming.
You hear me coming a mile away, like pop, 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 pop. Yeah, it's like the ultimate dadmobile. It's sick. Nice. I love it. Nice. Everyone looks at me like, what? Why? Why not?
Yeah, that's it.
So just throw it on the roof, and I don't know. Get someone else to drive my car as I ride my bike and be like, cheers.
Yeah, mate. No, it's like I'm looking forward to it a lot. I'm really, really looking forward to it. Just the sort of even some of the feedback I'm already starting to get from people in that area and sponsors and stuff like that. It's all starting to come together now. So
I suppose if you can drum up support, it's only going to highlight those local areas as well.
Yeah, it's going to be good. And obviously, doing it for a good cause as well. It's not just veterans, it's first responders as well.
Yeah. Which they've forgotten about a lot.
They are. And they've forgotten about too much, I think. But the boys down at Aussie Frontline, that's their newly formed charity, the Aussie Frontline Foundation, which is a guy called Mally and Dan Pronker, the directors of it. And they've just formed a charity out of that. So that's where the money's going.
Nice.
And, a lot of people within the veteran and first responder community know those boys. Yeah. So it'll definitely, the money will go to good use. And I'm trying to get 100K raise for them. So I think I'll be able to get there.
It's a big undertaking, but it's big. Oh man, I'm stoked. Like the fact that this is going to sound weird, but the fact you've got the time to do that, like that's awesome. Because, if you're working a normal 9 to 5, there's no way you'd have the time to do this.
Nah, yeah, definitely not. But I've definitely had to make some sacrifices to make this work. Like my mum needs to take a month off work. My wife is taking a month off work. I need to get podcasts done in March. So my March is going to be flat out because I need to get probably 5 or 6 done in that time so I can still, release them every week. So I don't know how that looks yet. I haven't even tried to look at that yet. I'm just trying to organise the rest of January and February, and then we'll look at March. And I need to double up episodes every week pretty much.
Yeah, okay.
To hold some in reserve.
Yeah.
But then you also as well, like I'll be running 7 to 8 hours a day. Who's going to take care of my social media, which is my wife, which just takes her away from her work. Yeah. So there's a lot of sacrifices that we have to make. But, mate, it's...
just bring a stand in to sit over there and just, talk shit and then just ruin your podcast altogether.
mate, I'll probably just get some AI doctorate thing in and work it from there.
Have you heard of this before?
They're doing freakishly well now. There was one that they did with Joe Rogan and a guest, and it was... not too few and far, mate.
There's been a few of those, I think,
it was scary.
I often refer to, and a really good mate of mine that, funnily enough, we really, really good mates. We often look at, we discuss it quite often, like AI, the new AGI, AI revolution, keep hitting this plant, that keeps happening. I'd like to talk to my hands. Hey. The interesting thing about it is, like, I look at it and go, it's like the Microsoft / Excel or Microsoft Word revolution from like the mid 90s onwards, where people had to sit down and actually learn how to type, and people had to learn how to do like Excel courses on how to, to upskill themselves in the workplace. Otherwise they're going to be left behind. That's how I view AI, is if you're not up to date on using something simple like a language bot, you're going to be left behind massively. And I don't think we need to be as scared of it from a professional employment point of view as people think, because it allows you to improve your workflow, and so you can actually produce more work in less time. I think that's a good thing. It will automate some roles. Like, if I was a professional coding guru, I'd be terrified. But I think for those who work in my field, I think we'd be all right. Again, the problem is, though, you need to make sure it has all the right security clearances that come with it, because you can't have just type in about, this defense project, blah, 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 blah on ChatGPT.
Yeah. Mate, I actually use it quite a bit. I actually bounce a lot of ideas off it.
Oh, I use it in my own time. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and I do a bit for the podcast as well. Just in regards to some of the copy I use for my social media posts.
Okay.
Yep. Which is interesting.
Okay.
It does some really cool stuff. Research on guests.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'll have a guest in and I'll just plug in a name and say, tell me what you know. And
tell me now about Justin Ryan Prosser.
Mate,
he's one of those window licker dudes.
Yeah.
And, he loves the taste of crayons, and he thinks he's awesome.
Mate, you would be surprised at what it can pull up on people. Which is
it's amazing
scary.
what it can do.
And it does it in under 10 seconds.
I know, it's incredible. The new 01 or 01 or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, I'm not paying for the $200 one, no way, but certainly just I think I've got 01 Mini and the GTP 4, which is I pay for.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Hey, can you talk me through where you were? We're just going to go back onto your military stuff, especially Afghanistan. Can you talk me through, your positioning on the 29th of August, where we lost the 3 boys?
Oh, yeah. So we were back at TK at the base, MMB TK, and it's probably about 10 o'clock at night. I think it was around that time. Again, I remember some other instances you would have remembered where we'd have some rockets come in and 10 o'clock at night or whatever, and then everybody would be like, "You're good," like, yeah, whatever, whatever. Again, people think that's weird.
Yeah, I was normally just like, don't fucking disturb me when I'm sleeping.
Yeah, don't make me get up and go do a clearance or something. I just want to stay in bed. I'm watching the first season of Game of Thrones. Leave me alone. But I think I was actually in bed. I think we were all trying to sleep. So we had all diggers from our section were in the one room together, and then all the NCOs, like full tracks and lance jacks, were in a room together. And so we were all together, and it was like, hey, wake up, get down to the compound, the vehicle yard. I was like, all right, or to the office, which is right next to the vehicle yard. So we grabbed our stuff. We're just standing around, and I remember the OC came out, and I can't remember who said it on one of your podcasts, but when we found out it wasn't boys from the Bund, there was almost like a relief, because I remember standing there going, fuck, who are these guys? Like, who is it? And I was like, who's out there? And I was like, shit, we were just out there earlier that day. You know, what's the situation? And then he came out and goes, oh, it's these names. And I still feel guilty now. I'm like, I gave a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
And I know I've met quite a few times one of their mums. They live in Canberra. And so, you know, I still feel bad about that. But I kind of lost. I'm a bit lost on the timeline, but I think it was probably we went down to where the down where the helicopters landed. I can't remember what they called it down there, but anyway, we were hanging down there, and they said, "Yeah, we're going to fly a fire team, an engineer, Brick, and some MPs out." And so myself, the 2IC and two other boys jumped in with a couple of engineers and I think we had 2 helicopters. But side note, it was like 2 a.m, I think, and these 2 American Black Hawks they landed, we hopped on, and then they just came off, and it was like they were in sync. They just sort of came off, like peeled backwards to the left, and off we went. Like it was beautiful. Whereas
picturesque.
But then I look back at all the safeties that go into our aviation within defense, where, you know, they land and then they've got to go through 1,000,001 checks, and it takes 25,000 years for them to then take off again. In real time, it's probably different, but, you know, it was something I thought at that time. But their windows are all perspex, the doors are shaking. I was like, Jesus. Yeah, this is going to last. But anyway, and we landed, and funnily enough, they'd secured the LZ and they just put a fire team out there. And I'm pretty sure Frenchie was there, and I got off and I was like, "How you going, man?" And he just went, "Oh yeah,
yeah."
And I was like, "Yeah, sweet, okay." And we just sort of walked in. I saw like I think it was like a helmet and some blood and shit. And then I got pushed off into the tower because I was a gunner. They're like, "Go get in the tower," and that's kind of the last I sort of. There's a little few other things in there, but like that was kind of there's some other stuff, but like. That was it. And I guess in a way consciously kept myself away from it because I didn't want to intrude on everyone down there. Because by the time we got there, they'd already moved a vehicle in front of where the ANA were further down the hill in the patrol base. So I'd sort of like they've got their shit sorted. They're doing their thing. I didn't want to get in their way. And even when I came off the tower, I sort of sat to the side, like away from them, and just put my helmet down and just laid on my helmet and tried to just close my eyes for 20 minutes. But I spent a lot of time in that tower that night. And I remember and you would have lived this life too, and it's even scarier. Like it's funny in training. Like, for example, when you do def ops and you're standing there in a pit and it's, 5 a.m, the sun's cracking first light, and you're struggling to keep your eyes open, and you're falling asleep standing up, and you're sort of catching yourself as you wake up. When you're doing that real time, it's pretty fucking scary because you're like, I'm the one person that's looking at in this sector, and if something goes on, and because we're so short-handed, it was like I was the only one up there. I think could be wrong.
Yeah. You're telling the story, mate. So.
Yeah, mate. Can you help me out? Yeah, so, and then I think, I don't know what time of the day it was, but, I saw this convoy of like, I think it was about 5 Humvees coming up from the south. And I said, hey, there's a bunch of Humvees with this huge Afghan flag. And so the gate to the patrol base that we were using, I don't know if there was a front gate, but the one we were using was actually up the top. And so the vehicles, I said, yeah, they've turned left, they're coming up the hill. And the platoon sergeant and the secco went out and met them there, and there was this fucking 50 cal just pointing at our gate, and I was just on instant, just flicked the switch, and I was just literally on the trigger waiting because it's just like, this is not kosher. Like at least he didn't even sort of lower the button, raise the barrel up. He just kept it pointed at the gate, and I was like, this is fucking not kosher. And the Afghan general. And I could be getting his name wrong. I believe it was like General Saphir or something along those lines. But he came in and, Can I say the
fuck
SAS patrol that was there? So RS was there with his patrol, and I believe there was an LO from them as well, and he walked in with his aide, and they were starting to take photos and shit. And I think that's when people started chiming, going, "Hey, whoa, this is our scene, like fuck off." And I wasn't privy to this conversation, but all I heard was just, you know, a whole bunch of ruckus. And then, you know, it started getting a bit physical between the Aussies and the ANA, between a senior ANA member and one of our soldiers.
Because from memory, he came in blaming us for it, didn't he?
Yeah, he came in. The story that was told me after I got off the tower was essentially, he said, it's our fault that we didn't have enough security from his soldiers, to the effect of.
Yeah.
You know, and
so he blamed, so just a higher ranking Afghan general came in after the 3 boys got shot, and he practically blamed the Australian Army for it.
Yeah, and so even then, you know, it was a bit emotionally charged. Not for me though. I was in work mode. I was just like, there's a job to do. Like, let's crack on. I reckon this is probably why I didn't know what my emotions were later down the line, which we'll talk about later. But you just crack on, and I don't know this for sure because it'd never been done before, but I reckon this is probably why. I don't know. A short time later, our whole combat team just rolled up. Like, we're talking ASLAVs, PMVs, the whole lot just rolled in and just like this massive show of force.
Yeah.
And nothing happened coming up that route. It was that same route that we're talking about that is IED up the wazoo.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. They weren't even. I don't think they were ambushed along the way. Like, they were just left alone. Like, it was just this huge show of force. And RS and his patrol had left by this stage. And they just rolled in, and I think we just packed up. And I think the whole call sign, including this section of the team that we went out that night, we all picked up and left.
Yeah,
we left at the same time. There's not much to say about it, really. Like, I just
like when we found out the names of the guys that had died, and you almost had a sense of relief.
Yeah,
which was like, you know, even to this day, I've still felt quite guilty about it. And the reason being is because, I don't know, like your mind,
human culture.
Yeah, like your mind plays so many tricks on you. I remember when that incident happened, and the 29th of August, we got woken up just like you. I think you were upstairs from us. So we got woken up and we were put on 2 minutes notice to move straight away. And, you know, they had just come out with, there's 3 Cat Alphas, no signs of life, couple Cat Bravos, Cat Charlie, whatever.
Yeah.
And so instantly you're like, oh, there's 3 dead.
Yeah.
Yes. And then they gave the company as well, it's Bravo Company. And straight away, like I'm talking straight away, I'm like, Foxy's out there, Nilo's out there, Frenchie's out there.
A whole bunch of the boys.
So straight away, and it's personalised for each different person because they have different relationships with the people that are out there. So for you, it might have been different people. But for me, I was like, you know what? I don't really care who's dead. It just cannot be one of those boys or cannot be any of them.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's and then all of a sudden, I remember this so vividly. They came out 5-10 minutes later and they were like, these are the names. And they started saying the names. And guys around me started breaking down because they were mates with them. And,
yes. And
I wasn't.
Sorry.
And I remember just being like, with each name that came out, I was like, it wasn't Foxy, it wasn't Frenchie, it wasn't Nilo. Pass. Next name came out, same thing. Next name came out, same thing. But the weird thing is that people around me were breaking down because they were good mates with them, but I wasn't. And I'm just like, it was just this weird feeling of relief that it wasn't my mates.
Yeah.
But it was someone that died.
Well, you look at it on the news though. I mean, you'd see, oh, someone's died and you're like, I've never heard of this person in my life. Like,
it doesn't affect you.
Whatever. So I think it's just part of that human nature disconnection of like, I can't take on everything.
Yeah.
But even when you remember when everything we all just went out and we were trying to find Old China. What was his name again?
Hekmatullah.
That's right, Sergeant Hekmatullah. That's right. I've still got that flyer that they were
I do as well, mate.
One of my trunks at home. I've literally got next to nothing up at home. It's all in trunks sitting in my in my garden shed.
Mine got stolen, mate.
Did it?
Man, my beret and all my stuff.
Bro, you never touch a ferret, man. You steal someone's ferret, that's blood.
All my stuff is stolen. So someone's in Adelaide is kicking around with a maroon beret and all my shit from Afghanistan.
Wearing his like old school Ozcam.
Yeah, mate. Someone stole it. If I ever fucking find him, I'll tear his head off.
It's like, warning to you, pal.
And mate, if you are listening to this podcast and want to drop around, just get in touch with me. I won't fucking...
Just put it in the letterbox, man.
Yeah, that's it.
Just walk away.
Yep.
But even when we went out, you remember we put all those patrols out and we were putting quote unquote blocking force in.
I was part of that.
Oh God. I think we did 6 days, another 6 days, 5 days. I can't remember. But even boys that knew them had to come out. They're our drivers, yeah?
Yeah.
They had to come out. They didn't have a choice.
Yeah, I remember some of the guys were best friends. Yeah, some of the guys were best friends with them.
That's right. They couldn't be there for the ramp ceremony.
Yeah, couldn't say goodbye and they had to go out. I remember that. We went out and there were guys like, you would try to talk to him as well when you were out that and setting up that cordon to try and find that guy. And man, they just didn't talk to you. They were like, they were just so dampened inside. And I would have been the same way if it was Nilo or Frenchie or Foxy that died. Fuck, I would have been down.
Yeah,
down big time.
Yeah. And again, I want to say I would be. But I drank that Kool-Aid so heavy, I was like, push it away. There's a job to do.
Yeah, you'd probably say that, and I like that's my reflection on it now.
Yes,
right then I probably would have been like, well, they knew what they were into, which they were.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a lot harsher side to me when I was younger. But like Neil said it perfectly. Corey Neil, like the war doesn't stop because people die.
That's right. It cracks on.
Like it actually gets started when that happens.
There was an interesting thing I read years and years ago. Or maybe it was a video I watched. But it was very interesting where they said, the way it went was they were comparing the American and the British experience. It was something along the lines of, and this was back when Helmand was red hot.
It was always red hot.
Yeah. Man. Oh, well, they didn't want to go there originally. I think the Brits were supposed to take Uruzgan. But they're like, nah, it's too hot. Like, we don't want to go there. We'll just go to Helmand because they'd been messed up in Basra in Iraq.
Yeah.
And so then they were like, nah, we'll just go to Helmand, somewhere quiet. And that was like the ultimate rat line.
Yeah. Well, 80 I think like 85% of the world's heroin comes out of Afghanistan. 75% of Afghanistan's heroin comes out of Helmand.
We've set up business in the wrong shop.
Yeah. Yeah. So but that just shows you how dangerous Helmand is.
Yeah, that's right. And so, but there's an interesting comparison where they said how the American and the British experience is. I think the British were like, the Americans were like, get on with it, it's your job, and that's it. Whereas the Brits were like, yes, it's going to be tough, but we'll have things in place to look after you when you get back. And I'm not sure if that's true, but that's how I looked at it, and that's how it looked like. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. And so I think I took something like that as like, I'll deal with that later. I've got a job to do. And I don't think I've ever, until recently, just sort of said, oh, it's okay. And when you think about, like when I often think about, like, is there a reason for me to feel certain ways? So, well, no, because again, someone's done it tougher than me before. Again, I don't want to feel like I'm a weak malingerer type mentality. It's all built in that subconscious. It's taken me a long time to sort of go, it's okay to feel those emotions. I don't know what they are. I don't know what the emotions are, but I feel them, if that makes sense. And so I think that's because I was so good at just compartmentalizing that stuff out.
Yeah. Well, the army was really good at that as well.
So good.
They were really good at keeping you busy, especially on during deployments.
Yeah.
So you can't stop and think.
Because
if you stop and think, then, you could get scared.
We often talk about times in the army and how rough it was and how we got fucked around and I often say, if you've spent time in an infantry unit, you're going to come out with some kind of depression. You're just the constant stuff around, coming and going, stand up, stand down. Like, it's just incredible, right? And you're always working at 100%. And so, but then all of that, there was some fucking awesome times too. Such good times, man.
Yeah.
Like, just, before phones too. So all you did,
yeah, that were the best times.
all you did was quote like movie quotes, Step Brothers, and
it's funny that you bring that up. That like
Tropic Thunder,
that pre-phone period, where everyone was feeding off each other.
Yeah,
they weren't feeding and looking down off their phone. Like, you could imagine now what happens if like a digger gets 15 minutes to himself, he would be on his phone. Back in the day, like we just were forced to communicate with each other.
Yeah, that's right. I saw a video just the other day where they showed someone that used facial recognition to open their phone 300 meters away in the dark, and they had it on the camera, and you could just see lights up the whole area. And then it was like, okay, so you're not going to use facial recognition, but then there was something like the camera flashlight would flash for just a split second or something. That's right. The night vision capabilities on phones, you can actually see the IR hitting the ground.
Yeah, right.
So then so it's like this, you can't even use them. You just can't. I mean, and this whole like, I don't know if you've been around, but you know, everything's becoming digital.
Yeah.
Everything's becoming digital in the army. And so when you've got, you know, no longer we're just sitting there with this tiniest little silo trying to do stuff on the ground with, you know, everyone sitting around us so you can't be seen. You now got dudes with, you know, Palm Pilots on their chest plates tapping away trying to call in fire missions, or you've got dudes trying to be coordinates, whatever. And if you're doing that at night, you are seen a mile away. So I don't know. Again, I'm out of that tactical environment now, but you know, I don't know how they're dealing with it. Maybe they're just dealing with it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I got it. Someone. The podcast is already released now, but it talks about like the technology, drone warfare type stuff that's happening over in Ukraine at the moment. We went deep into it. Like I said, the episode's already been released. It's with that Matt Williams. Yeah, okay. Willie beats cancer.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, so I was with him and we
and he's had firsthand,
Yeah, in Ukraine. Like it was, mate, some of the shit that he was saying with the technology advancements in regards to drones and stuff like that. Blew my mind, man. Scared the shit out of me as well.
Yeah, man.
Scared the shit out.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. Hey, I want to ask you a few personal questions about your separation from the military and, you know, given the things that you had happened to you over in Afghan. Like, do you ever struggle with like the night of the 29th or that IED blast? Like, is there any stuff that, you know, replays in your head or like PTSD that creeps in?
I don't have any specific events.
Yeah.
Funnily enough. Not from operations. I don't. It's like, again, I think it's this emotional numbness that compartmentalizes it away. And it was part of a job that we all knew what we were doing. And that was the risk when you fight insurgencies and you're trying to live with, you know, the local forces and to a degree. And it's really hard, you know, when you think about if we were here and we were having foreign forces come support us in something we're doing and we weren't paid correctly and our equipment was poor and we didn't have a medical system that's going to be able to casevac us, and even then there's probably no help for you if you end up injured or wounded or something along those lines. But then that force leaves every 6 to 8 months and then you get someone new. It's really hard to trust them to do the things. And then with the moment when a bad egg causes a problem, and so then you compartmentalize everyone away and everyone's living in different compounds. It's how do you form relationships with them? Like we like you, we weren't attached to a mentoring team, but we did do a lot of work with, I think it was like the 3 Kandak recon group. And we did a couple of missions with them where they'd come out with us and they were just getting some experience. But how do you form a bond with these people when they're constantly coming and going? And I remember we had a time when, do you remember when they said, oh, we're cutting away interpreters? Well, they were getting rid of a lot of their interpreters because we were drawing forces down as well. And I remember a couple of the interpreters came up into our accommodation because they were really concerned for their safety.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you doing here, mate? And they're like, yeah, this is happening. We're going to have this. And I just went, yeah, well, what do you want me to do about it, mate? Like, talk to your boss. I was like, there's nothing I can do. Like, you've got to get the fuck out of our accommodation. You're not allowed to be here. And like, I was such an asshole about it, but I think it was my defense mechanism.
Yeah.
I can't allow myself to get caught up in all of that.
Yeah.
Because I find if I get drawn in on something, I find it really hard to move forward. So I acknowledge it and I park it and then I crack on. It's only in the last couple of years I've started unpacking that. And all these micro moments of like, pushing shit aside, just it compounds, right? And not in a bad way in the sense of like, oh, I can't handle my life. It's just I don't understand why I am the way I am. And so I don't have any specific hang-ups.
Yeah.
It's just cracked on. And that might make me sound like I'm a harsh person. And it probably did. And you know, in some regards, I have had a very strained relationship with my daughter in the last 5 years. And it's only now it's becoming a lot better. And a lot of it has to do with that type of, I think a lot of it has to do with that as well. So it's not that I don't love her to death and I'd do anything for her. It's just that I think my mentality was, or even the way I've been trained was, job's on.
Yeah.
So everything else comes second to that. And I think that gets really, really hard. I noticed two things when I was in Army. Those who had partners before they joined the Army generally were pretty good. Yeah, they had their arguments or whatever because everyone got sick of them going away. But they're stronger than those who were young and then found their partner in that local environment, you know, maybe 2 years into their career. They haven't been at the initial start of the journey saying, okay, well, I'm going to go join the Army. That's a 6 to 12 month sort of journey of trying to go through recruiting and all that sort of. So they're just thrown into the deep end with it. And so I think because of that, and there's probably 1,000 facets. It's like because I was with my ex-wife at the time, I'd kind of just, she knew they always came second to the job, which sounds really horrible. It really does. Now I look back and it's freaking horrible. But that's the reality of it. It's service life. It's not a job. It's a service life. And, you know, you're literally giving service. And that means up to your life being taken, well, including your life being taken in conflict. So I probably still have some traits of that. But I'm really working hard to get that out because it's not healthy now, especially now that I'm not in. I have a couple of businesses myself that I'm scaling now, and with any luck, they will. They actually are booming now, which is really good. Yeah. But I'm really, I'm keeping that separate from my professional career now until that's really like at the point where I was like, you know what, I am earning double to what I normally would in my normal job because I want to make sure that's good to go. Yeah. But that drive and that everything else comes second also fueled that as well, where I'll just sit down and I'll do 8 hours worth of work on my own on a weekend because it has to be done. So I've got to be really conscious that I don't just compartmentalize everything else in my life out, including people. Yeah. That was a long-winded explanation.
Yeah. Toot had an excellent example of what you were just talking about, especially with guys separating, and he got told this at the wrong time of his healing journey. I
did hear this part, yeah.
And it was very early after he separated, and he was the psych told him, he goes, mate, if you Army guys, especially guys that have been over in Afghan, if you guys understand some of the skills you have and the power you have, you can kill it in the outside world. Yeah. And it took him a long time to realize that, but I guess that's what you're talking about as well.
Yeah, probably.
Using what you have from your experience in the Army and putting that into a business or running or whatever.
And I think it's probably part of it, but it's not always the positive soft skills that come across. It's also learning from the dumb shit that you did. Like I did some dumb stuff when I was in uniform. I look back and I go, why? It's probably because I wasn't happy in my life. It was just dumb. I just, if I went out with the boys, because I didn't go out that often, I'd write myself off too, because I had family. But when I'd go out with the boys, I'd just fucking write myself off. Even in the chat, if there was I would write myself off. I was a full blown piss wreck. Yeah. When it was on.
There is a huge drinking culture in the military when I was ex, and then even more in the battalions. In the infantry units.
But then that leads you to do dumb shit. And so I'm not going to talk about it because I'm going to incriminate myself, but so you can take those experiences as well. So, it's all those experiences that can help you grow forward. And I think if you can reconcile them in yourself, you can have really good success. Doesn't mean you're cold and you don't care. It's just, it happened and I acknowledge it and I'm, going to have to just crack on. And because if you don't, you get caught in this vortex of self-loathing. Yeah. And, it's probably, this will be an unpopular opinion, but from my experience of what I've seen people separating from the ADF, generally those who are successful are those who have planned it and they move to a location that is conducive to understand them. And I think, we've spoken about this,
like a military town.
Maybe a military town. Again, you've got to be careful. If you get out in Townsville and Darwin, what are you going to do? There's the emergency services. there's Wilson security guard, which is fine. If you want to go work security, I have no problem with that. But I don't know if you remember looking at the discharge when they looked at, what our skills aligned with in the civilian space. It was like security on the gate.
Yeah.
Like this is bullshit. I've literally carried grenades and fired thousands of rockets. Like, you're full of shit. And I've led soldiers, like, leave me alone. But if you stay, I believe if you stay in places like, go to the mines, right? We're getting out, going to the mines,
Yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah. We're going to be what do they call them? Shot firer. Yeah. Like, fine. That's fine. Like, no problem with that. But I like for the option that you can go places that provides a lot of options. So, if, you stay in Townsville, you're limited in your options. Stay in Darwin, same thing. Whereas if you go to places like the capital cities or some of the larger coastal towns, you're going to have more options. And part of the reason why I ended up in Canberra was work originally. But what I found was because I was surrounded, I still worked in. I'll go back a step. So when I decided to make that separation, all that funding that I spoke about earlier became available. It's like $5,300. So I went and did a couple of certificates. I did Agile Project Management and Organizational Change Management. And so with my previous experience and with some experience now, like I'm about to do some more uni, and it's like I've got to do 3 subjects and I get a postgrad in BA. So, and then another 4 subjects in an MBA. And that's only just because of my leadership and experience in uniform. Yeah. What I've been doing now with some skill sets and courses, and then to now. So, you don't have to just go, I'm going to get out and go, I'm going to go to uni. You don't have to. If you want to go to uni, that's fine. But you don't have to. There's so many other options. I work with a consultancy firm. I haven't been to uni. It's just I have the experience, I have the clearance, I have the nuances and understanding of what the client requires from a communication point of view. So it works in my favor. And you just got to be willing to accept that you're not going to be the expert anymore. You just have to be able to go, okay, well, I can make these decisions, and I can just shut up and learn.
You need to be retrainable.
Yeah, that's right. And so, but there's also things you can teach the workforce you're with now. Just how to negotiate a tough conversation. A lot of people avoid that. Yeah. And so having those tough conversations and just making people feel comfortable, like, be upfront. This is going to be an uncomfortable conversation. I'm happy if you'd have someone else here, but we need to have it. And and so just be nice. Don't be a jerk.
Yeah, I found that when I was getting out, and this is in multiple workplaces, there was a lot more lying. Yeah. A lot of people lied. Okay. And that was just a personal experience for me, but people would not tell the truth. Okay. And I really struggled with that because I knew people were lying in certain situations to cover someone's ass. But if I was, if that was in the military, like you were normally pretty upfront with it. Like you were like, if I fucked up, I fucked up.
Oh, you knew about it.
And you also knew about it as well, but you would almost accept that that's just the way it had to be.
You know what I liked about that is when you fucked up, they dealt with it, you moved on. Yeah. Like that was the beautiful thing about it. That's changed over the years. It really has.
What, in the military?
Yeah. They've gone away from a lot of, well, again, my experience seeing they use the administration process a lot more. So, if you use the DFDA, that's it's proven without reasonable doubt. Like it happened. But when you use the administration process, it's based on probabilities. Yeah. So it's really easy if you want to give someone the flick or want to give them the punishment or whatever it is, you just use the admin process. Yeah. Which I find is like this passive aggressive toxic, like you're not hitting things full on. It's like, that's what the DFDA is there for. It's to realign people so they become better members in the ADF. Yeah. That's what it's designed for. It allows you to retrain them so they can get back on board. But if you go down the admin process, it's a bit different. It's a bit more flexible for leadership to do whatever they want.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, again.
Why and they've moved to that?
Just where I was, it was used a lot more, you know. Okay. And I don't know if you remember, but it was stuff was done at the lower level too. Like if dudes were constantly stuffing up or they were late, or their uniforms are shit, you'd give them show parades. You put it in a register and go, mate, you're getting show parades for the next 3 days. Every time after breakfast, lunch, and before we go, you're going to present your brass polish to me. If it's not done, like, too bad. Or, if they're constantly late, like, you have to be at this time.
But it was normally dealt with in the teams as well.
That's what I'm saying.
Like the guys would deal with it as well.
Your secco's like, your secco walks up and goes, mate, you're screwing me around, so strap in. It's like, so when you see those funny videos of US Marines just like mopping the parade ground when it's raining, it's like, well, it's because they're probably stuffing around, haven't cleaned something properly multiple times. So like for us, it'd be like, you've lost your weekend, you're on guard. And that's so much more effective than saying I'm going to charge you or $100 because, and they're going to ruin your career because you've taken a charge of prejudicial conduct. But if you just go, hey, you've lost your guard, it's in the register. Next time, mate, I'm gonna infringe you this time. Next time, they go, oh fuck, But if you take away their weekend, the one time they've got to get out with the boys and have a few beers, mate, on a young digger, $100 is nothing to a young digger. Yeah. But you take away that experience, the time,
you'll probably save them $1,000.
That's right. Well, that's a good point. Yeah. So there's those sort of things. But back to what you were saying about, we were talking about, like moving to a location that allows you to do a soft transfer, as like I guess I would refer to it as. In Canberra, government town, purposely designed for that. A lot of military members, defence members everywhere. And so even though I may not be working directly with them every day, I still see them. And I see them at least every couple of days. So, and I work, and because I'm working defence engagements, then obviously work with them. And it's a very different experience because I'm working in a headquarters away from the tactical environments. It's very different. The way I'm spoken to is very different, and I think I mentioned it earlier, but it's handy too that when I say, hey, I've got to go do a specialist appointment for DVA, they go, oh, what is it? And you actually have the conversation with the defence members and they get it. They go, yeah, fine, man, go do what you got to do. But if you move to a town that has no concept of what the ADF is, they're like, if you want to go to a doctor's appointment, that's sick leave. And you're like, I don't need to take a whole day. I just need an hour.
Yeah.
And you're like, nah, that's a day. So like for me, like depending on the client, they'd be like, yeah, man, like whatever, make up the time. I was like, yeah, sweet. So I might hang back for an hour and just we'll look through a slide deck that we put together or something. I don't know, like just spitballing here, but it's just easier. You got someone who's relatable. They just get it.
Yeah.
So I often say to people, try and get to a place that you can rely on others that actually get you, but at the same time, assist you in your transition. Like I lent on a couple of boys that used to be in the Bund that did it before me. So I took what they did on board, used some of it, didn't use it, but it's just getting that understanding. And, I've had people help me with my DVA paperwork. I've used an advocate. Well, yeah, I have used an advocate in the past. I haven't, and then now I just do it myself because I just know what's required. So I can help other people just do it online. And it's a lot easier now to describe how I feel about injuries or how that makes me feel. Like, what's the physical pain behind it? What is it? And so, and because you've got those other people around you that you can have those discussions about what does it actually mean? Like, oh, my hip's always hurting. Like, and they're like, I don't know. It's someone might go, oh, my hip hurts. And they go, funnily enough, so does mine. And it wasn't until then that you actually understood that you actually had a hip problem because you just crack on. You're like, oh, just whatever. Yeah. And so again, anecdotally, I reckon, if you go back to your hometown that has no relatable, it's in the middle of Idaho, bumfuck Idaho, you run a bigger risk of becoming a statistic. Because you don't have your support network anymore.
Yeah. A place like Adelaide is not military at all. So I just came back and I found it really hard to have anything in common with people because I'd changed from the person I left. Yeah. You know what I mean? When I left when I was 18 and then I came back when I was 23, the guys that I used to hang around with, like it was a different Sam that came back.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. So I'm from...
And I didn't have any military people around me in Adelaide because it's just not a military town.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. So I'm from Melbourne originally.
Yeah.
I grew up in Frankston, Afghanistan. And I'll never move back to Melbourne. I hate the traffic of the capital city. Absolutely hate it. And so Canberra's good like that. Well-maintained roads. Peak hours like 10 minutes. It's fucking awesome. I won't be there forever because the winters suck. But there's probably one person I speak to regularly, two people from when I was in, and there's probably a third occasionally we speak. But that's it. because I can't relate. And generally, two of them are tradies, so they know what it's like to work outside in the cold and in the heat, and so you've got that part of it. So I don't know how my transition was quite smooth because I'd had a bit of people to lean on. I knew where I was going. I knew I was going to get into a contract somewhere because there's so many kicking around, and I was willing to take the pay cut. So that's the one thing that people aren't willing to. By the time you level even it out, I'm a sergeant, I'm earning $100,000 a year, and I get DHA, and I've got free medical, which is garbage anyway, but it's free. I know that if I need a surgery, it's going to be covered. I'll probably get priority on that. That's a good thing. You do get priority not a lot of the time. They pay for it. But this is where I say to people, like, if you get in early, get your DVA sorted, be really honest about what it means and how you feel. You don't have to worry about it as much. Like, there's so many benefits of when you actually do these things properly, because suddenly you go, okay, well, I don't have to worry about, if this flares up, is it going to be a problem? Whereas now everything's recognized. If it's a problem, I just go see the doc and they take care of it. The only thing I have to, and again, the other thing too, if you're missing work, like your civilian work because of your injuries, like there are ways where you can get DVA to cover your wage through the convalescence period. So, again, I'm not an expert on that part, but I know it's available. Something's available. So it's not like you're always out on your own. And this is the other thing. It's like we said about DVA being convoluted. The website it's just, where do you find information? It's so hard. So even if you get a snippet of a piece of information from somebody who's gone through it themselves, well, at least that might be enough for you to find at least the area of whatever document you're trying to look, or at least the right document, and then you can look at it yourself. Yeah. So there's just those little 1%ers that they add up, and that really helps. So, I hear about these horror transitions out, and to be honest, mine hasn't been like that. Mine's been quite positive. Yes, I've had my own sort of like my own attitudes and how I respond to things. I've had to really bring that in line. And it takes, like I said, it takes time. And having some of those boys around, they can go, yeah, man, you probably overreacted a little bit. I'm like, oh, really? I thought I was actually doing the right thing when I don't know, told a colonel to fuck off because I'm not in the army anymore. Like, you don't fucking talk to me like that anymore, champ. I'll fucking flatten you where you stand. Like, they're like, you can't say that. And I was like, normally I wouldn't, but there's something about him that got into me. He's like, you still can't, man. You're wearing a suit. And I was like, it's even better. And they're like, you can't, man. I was like, oh, fair enough. Like, and that happened once. And that was like in the first 6 months of me being here. And I took, and you take it on board. And funnily enough, this is where the cycling and all this sort of stuff, and I've got a little gym set up it's a pretty sick gym set up at home. I can really focus on what I want, which was such a foreign thing for me. And it took me about a year and a half to get my head around it. But now, because I can focus on me and I have an out and I found stuff that I enjoy now, and I can work on my own injuries and my own, I'm not walking around with these knees that are constantly aching. And every time I try and get up off the ground, I feel like I'm going to fall over. It's like, okay, it's manageable now. So yeah, there's so many benefits of just going to somewhere where people are relatable in my eyes.
Yeah, I struggled a bit with my separation because I was done, mate. I was like really, I was
pop smoke.
And one of the things as well, like I needed a shoulder recon, and I know I needed a shoulder recon.
Yeah.
When I was up in Townsville, I was getting called a malingerer because I was like, I can't do this. My shoulder's bad.
Was that from Headshed?
I can't remember. I can't remember. It was and it was the. Anyway, I can't remember who it was, but they were labeling me as a malingerer because I didn't want to do stuff because my shoulder was cooked. And anyway, I ended up pushing through my separation within like a month. Got out of there, got home, and funnily enough, went and seen, because I had like 3 or 4 months of leave, so I still was in the army. Went and seen the army doctor, had a shoulder recon.
Nice.
Yeah, because the doctor was like, mate, this thing is fucked.
But the emotional nightmare just to get there.
Yeah. And then this is the other thing. So I was post a year out of Afghan, or 18 months out of Afghan, sitting in my house with a shoulder recon, taking me 6 months to get better, no work. I was just like...
And there's no one you can call up the boys and go, let's just come around and play PlayStation in front of me. At least I can talk to someone.
Then I just started drinking heaps, you know what I mean? And that's what got from there. So.
I had a couple of good friends. One's still in, and then and then there's another one who's out, a really good mate of mine. He's in Canberra too. And I remember when this particular person transferred to another corps before they got out. And I remember going, hey, man, it's going to be pretty rough. You're a bit older than most of, that are going to go in there. And it became a bit of an issue. And I remember he'd call me and be like, what do I fucking do? Like, I'm in a location, I'm on my own. I'm not getting any support. And then like daily we would have conversations because I was genuinely concerned about him. I was like, fuck, man, like we really need to have these conversations. And he just had to work the problem. Like, and again, I guess if you get in the mindset of just work the problem, work it. And so then, and it took months and months and months and months and months. And eventually he was medically discharged from his injuries. But again, same thing. I probably could have been medically discharged myself, like you. Just like I probably could have been, but I just want to get away.
Yeah.
I just want to get away. And
that was my thing. I just need to get the fuck out of here.
First time I left in 2018, I was out. I was like, leave me alone. Don't touch me. But but I didn't have a plan. So what do? I'll just go to reserve time. And funnily enough, my platoon sergeant from the GAN, he was one of the CSMs or training warriors up at one of the university regiments. He's like, do you want some work? And I was like, fuck yeah, man. Yeah. And I just did heaps of reserve work. And I don't care what anyone says. Reserve instruction's hard, man. Like reserve courses are hard. Like they were up at like 05, getting ready for like 05:30 or 06 courses or lessons. So they're having breakfast in that time as well. And then they'd work till like 10, 11 o'clock every night. And it was like some of them would do it for a month straight. Like it was hectic. Yeah. It was chaos.
Keeping you busy.
Oh, man, it's hard work.
Hey, mate, this is almost 2.5 hours. So let's start to wrap this thing up. You've probably heard this 1,000 times. It's the question I ask all my guests. So if you were, if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self one bit of advice about life, what would it be?
Join the army.
Yeah?
I reckon everyone should have a crack.
Do you think compulsory serving time, like the 2 years like Israel do and Norway do?
With conditions. Yeah. So do you remember it was late last year, the government was talking about they're going to potentially pay off HECS debts for people.
Yeah.
I am not 100% opposed to that, but it has conditions. The reason I say that is I didn't go to uni. Why the fuck don't I get my fucking bills paid for?
Yeah.
Look at what I'm doing. I managed I've got, I'm not saying I'm a genius or a jet, but I was like, but it's possible. I often refer to myself as the window licking Shrek. Yeah. So even back when I was in the army, I was like, there should be some kind of like service that would build a nation together. We're not always going to agree on everything, but at least gives us some like self-love in our own country. Because, I think every Western country is going through their own struggles at the moment. And you you go, well, I want to go to uni. Okay, but I want my uni paid for. Well, you have to do STEM. You have to get in the STEM fields. Something that's going to build the nation and build it back to what it was. Maybe help us bring back manufacturing, help develop the nuclear programs that we're trying to develop with submarines, which then potentially lead into, cities having modular reactors of some sort. I don't know, I'm spitballing here, right? That's going to be worthwhile, but you have to work in that field for 10 years before your HECS debt's paid off. Okay, fair enough. But I want to do an arts degree. That's, studying something, I don't know, the growth of plants. That's fine. But you're not going to get paid for unless you join the Defence Force or you do emergency services volunteering. So you can still work, but you have to show up almost treat it like a reserves, but it's volunteering. So, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, whatever it is they need to do, and call outs for fires. But if you don't meet that minimum quota of times you have to be there, well, then you're going to get a portion of your HECS that you've got to pay yourself. Or you're going to make up for it or it's going to take longer. So there's conditions that come with it. And I think that would be beneficial to everyone. So I'm not saying that it has to just be the ADF. I'm saying emergency services. I know Singapore actually have compulsory emergency services time along the line with their military. But I don't think we have to go that hardcore. Yeah. But at least it gives us, you're not getting something for free, if that makes sense. You got to earn it. So I reckon that's a good thing. Yeah. And once you're in the army, funnily enough, I've just been reflecting on my time I never really participated in the sports. Like there's always sports on, or there's always like language courses you could go, or adventure training, like shit you could nominate for. I never did. Unless the unit told me to do it. Because I was like, nah, the boys.
Yeah.
I actually look back and go, man, I got nominated and panelled or put on the team for like the 3 Brigade softball team. I didn't turn up to one training session. 2 years in a row. I was like, oh no, I've got to go look after the boys, go to bush, whatever. It was always about the boys. And I really look back and I'm like, I wish I got more involved with that. I wish I'd gone and done more language courses because I'm learning Vietnamese at the moment. On my own time, after work, at 6 o'clock at night, and in winter in Canberra, it's dark at 5:30. Yeah. So I'm like driving home half an hour because I'm like, what? Like this is like the extreme ends of Canberra. It's half an hour. Like it's nothing. But still, you know, I'm just like, I could have done that. I could have done a 6-month course on work time at the School of Langs. I did School of Langs in like 2009. Did some Tok Piz in like Papua New Guinea. Yeah, that was like 5 weeks. That was wicked. Yeah, so there's things like that I wish I'd done. So if you get those times to go in and they're available, go do them. I remember when I was still in, even in the Air Force, I had a lot of my teams who, when I was in the Air Force, I had dog handlers, ADGs, Air Force security, like heaps of different type of musterings under my command. And I would be like, oh yeah, the unit won't, they'd be like, unit won't let me go play footy. A lot of my ladies would play women's rugby and NRL. Like they won't let me go. And I was like, yeah, service needs, rah, 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 rah. And I actually, and I remember sitting there going, yeah, service needs, yeah. And they go, oh yeah, no, some 1-stars allowed us to do it. Told the CEO to just pull his head in. It's like, oh, why does he get involved? Like that 1-star should stay out. It's the CEO's prerogative, you know? And then I just, as I remove myself from it, I'm like, you know what? I wish I'd done that myself. Yeah. I really do. Because those are the experiences as well. Why does it always have to be hardcore, rah, rah, rah? Why not go have some fun? Like I was an instructor, one of the recruit instructors I worked with quite close, he's still in. He ref touch footy. Yeah. So every year, just go to Coffs Harbour for a week and ref touch footy.
I think look, from what I see on social media now, they're pretty big on that sort of stuff.
It's good.
Like they're pretty big on even fight nights or something.
6RAR went right hardcore into the MMA stuff.
Yeah, it was someone like that. But then they had different units fighting each other, and then but now like
God, you can just see where the crowd's going with that one.
But no, it's very like unit camaraderie now. You know, like it would be big on 3RAR. We'll play 1RAR and shit like that.
Oh yeah, I remember those games. I remember standing there. I remember
they were bloodbaths.
Oh man, we bloodbaths. When we were still in Sydney, we got back from an exercise and they're like, Tone's back. We got back early, and they're like the 3RAR footy teams playing a combined Army Navy so Navy Air Force team. And we wiped the floor with them. Like our boys just wiped the floor with them. And like, I remember standing there, 400 dudes or something, just screaming the battalion song in maroon berets. And it was just a sight. I was just like, this is awesome. And and this is like small contingent on the other side of the field, like, oh, we better get out of here.
Yeah. No, it was all good fun. It was all good fun.
Yeah.
But look, mate, thanks very much for coming in. We're about to hit 2.5 hours. So,
that's legit. Yeah. I could keep talking.
Mate, I have a lot of guys in and, we sort of reflect on the time after the podcast.
Yeah.
It flies. It honestly flies. Like a lot of people have come in and they're quite nervous about, it going for half an hour, and then all of a sudden we're talking, we look down, it's 2.5 hours gone. It happens all the time, bro.
Mate, I tell you, this podcast has given me ideas on what I could do in Canberra with a podcast. It really has. Yeah. Like it's just...
Well, that's good, man.
It's sick. And I'm probably going to pull on you for some guidance. Mate, if I decide to action it.
Mate, no dramas at all. Yeah. No dramas at all. But mate, Justin Prosser, thanks for coming on the Two Worlds Collide podcast.
Legend. Cheers, mate.
Good on you. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And for more information, head over to our Instagram at Two Worlds Collide Podcast. Take care.